Good afternoon, members, and welcome to this meeting of the City Council. I'm delighted to see people in the public gallery watching democracy in action. But I would ask all members of the public present, in order to avoid unnecessary distraction to councillors and others watching the proceedings, that you keep to your chosen seat until a natural break in the agenda. During the meeting today, I will be making rulings on process and conduct and would ask councillors to abide by the standing orders and rules of debate. At certain times, I may seek guidance from my advisors. Should we need to adjourn, I will inform the council of what is happening and a time for us to reconvene. If members' speeches run over the time allocated, I will allow you to finish your sentence, but ask you to finish as quickly as possible. I would also like to take this opportunity to remind members that there is no local government equivalent of parliamentary privilege. Members will therefore be liable for any defamatory statements they make, and may also remind councillors of the requirements of the member officer protocol. If you wish to speak during the meeting, I would ask that you raise your hand and wait for me to invite you to speak. Please raise any points of order verbally. I will then pause the meeting to deal with the point of order. When raising a point of order, please state which procedure, rule or law you believe has been breached. All votes will be conducted via the electronic voting system today. If we receive any amendments to the recommendations before Council today, I will adjourn to ensure that all members have adequate time to read the amendments. Item number 1. I move to item number 1, apologies. Are there any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. We have apologies from Councillors Rebecca Smith, Darcy, Bridgman and Allen.
Can I ask if there are any further apologies? Yes, Councillor Hendy.
We have apologies from Councillor Krisnach and Chris Cudday. Councillor Cudday will be late. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 2. I move that we agree the minutes from 23rd of February 2026 as a correct record. Deputy Lord Mayor, will you second my proposal?
I will second your proposal, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak? Thank you. We'll move to the vote now. Please vote using the buttons on your unit. Green for in favour, red against and amber to abstain. That is carried. Item number 3. Declaration of interest. Can members please make it known by raising their hands if they have any private or disclosable pecuniary interest in any of the matters on today's agenda? None? Thank you. Item number 4. Appointments to committees and outside bodies and council proportionality. Before I move the recommendations, members should note that the Green Group have notified a change to its nomination on licensing committee. Councillor Poyser replaces Councillor McLeay. Otherwise, I move to the recommendations as set out in the report with that change noted. Deputy Lord Mayor, can you second the motion?
I will second the motion, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Does any member wish to speak? Thank you. We'll move to the vote now. Please vote using the buttons on your keypad. Motion is carried. Item number 5, questions from the public. There are 4 questions, but I believe only Mr. Surtees is here. So, Mr. Surtees, would you please raise your question?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My question is to Councillor Kate Taylor. Plymouth City Council prides itself on being an inclusive employer and employs 2,500 people, yet only 97 of those are recorded as disabled. Why is this, and what steps will you take to improve inclusive employment for all at Plymouth City Council?
Councillor Taylor, would you respond, please?
Thank you for your question. There are many reasons why employees do not disclose a disability. For example, fear of stigma, privacy concerns, or not identifying with the term disabled. This is supported by national data, although the data relies solely on what staff choose to record, so the headline figure does not represent the true level of disability within the workforce at Plymouth City Council. Plymouth City Council is a Disability Confident Leader Level 3, the highest national standard for inclusive employment. This includes a guaranteed interview scheme for disabled applicants meeting essential criteria, actively offering reasonable adjustments to enable staff to start work and continue to work, and working with external partners to strengthen practice. We also have a brilliant staff disability network who do brilliant work to support employees that identify as disabled and help build support and trust across the organisation. So there's lots of actions underway to strengthen inclusive employment, disability confidence and neurodiversity support across the council. And as part of this, we'll be launching the new Neurodiversity Toolkit during Neurodiversity Celebration Week, which provides managers with practical guidance on adjustments, awareness and inclusive ways of working. And many of us in the Chamber are looking forward to the Neurodiversity Conference on Wednesday, which is organised by staff themselves to support neurodiversity in the workplace. Several actions in the Equalities, Diversity and Inclusion Action Plan reinforce this direction of travel. These include improving the quality of our workforce data and systems and ongoing campaigns that encourage our staff to update their equality information, including disability status. We are also reviewing all recruitment materials to ensure that they are inclusive and accessible, actively monitoring recruitment data to identify and address barriers, and strengthening learning for managers. Taken together, these actions demonstrate that we are actively addressing underreporting of disability and continuing to strengthen inclusive employment practice across the organisation. And of course, inclusive employment means we can help our city by providing opportunities for employment and improving our services. So the figure of 97 reflects underreporting rather than a true number of disabled colleagues. And we remain firmly committed as a disability confident leader to creating a workplace where people feel safe to disclose and where inclusive employment is the norm.
Thank you. That concludes the questions from the public. The other questions where the questioner is not here today will be answered in writing and put in the minutes. Item number 6 is announcements. I have one announcement. I have an award to make, so I'll come down into the well of the chamber to make the award. I'm delighted to invite Jane Hunt to come forward to be recognised for Plymouth's Supporting Internships programme. Which, sorry, it's Tina, is it? Sorry, my apology. I'm delighted to invite Tina Brinkworth to come forward to be recognised for Plymouth's Supporting Internships programme, which has won the Bronze Innovation Awards from IESE. This bold programme creates high-quality supported internship opportunities for young people with special educational needs or disabilities, opening doors for long-term ambitious employment. Please join me in congratulating all those who've made this possible. Leader, do you have any announcements?
Thank you, Lord Mayor, I do. I just wanted to make a statement, given the current international situation, in terms of the impact that it might have on the city, in terms of fuel and energy. People may be concerned about security of supply and price gouging and all the rest of it. And officers have prepared a short briefing, which I'm happy to make available to councillors on this. In terms of the security of supply of diesel, we receive a weekly delivery to top up our storage tanks. We constantly monitor volumes as part of a robust business planning environment, and we currently have adequate supplies. The cost of fuel is variable and not fixed, and therefore we are exposed to fluctuations in the market. We have reflected the current increase and likely further increases in budget monitoring. So it's under constant review. We've already purchased all our summer 26 energy needs, so we're protected for that period. There won't be any impact as a result of what's happening in the Middle East in this respect. We've purchased 40% of what we need for winter 26, and we're reluctant to buy any more at the moment for two reasons. If Chelsea Meadow Solar Farm progresses, we'll be protected by the virtual power purchase agreement with Chelsea Meadow Community Solar, and we're conscious of not overbuying power until the delivery timescales are a bit clearer. I know you'll hate that net zero stuff, Councillor Ricketts, but there you are. If we buy all of our winter 26 power now, there is a risk that prices will fall again, so we'll be paying more than we need to. Laser advises us that some market commentators are predicting short-term price increases while others are assuming higher prices for the longer term. So we're monitoring the situation daily and adjusting our strategy to suit. It's quite a long note, so I won't read too much more, but I'll make that available to you all today, okay? So you've got that. In terms of fuel oil, I know in the city there's not many people still on oil tanks, but I know in a travel to work area that there are. So there's an important announcement today from the government that over £50 million has been made available to help families struggling with heating oil costs. the money will be coming to councils through the Household Support Fund from the 1st of April. That turns into the Crisis and Resilience Fund. Okay, so there'll be about, I think it's 27 million for England. So if there are any people really struggling with fuel oil scalping, and there's been some, 3 times the cost of, people are profiteering like crazy at the moment. But if there are any people in Plymouth that are still reliant on that, who are in that poverty trap and have got exceptional costs for heating, but also who are on benefits, there is this help available through the Crisis and Resilience Fund. And again, councillors will make sure all councillors are aware of this information. So if they have got households in this situation, they can react. Okay. I wanted to just brief the council at the moment on the fact that we've got an election coming up on May the 7th this year. We didn't cancel ours. We didn't ask to cancel ours. So I'm quite happy to stand on our record. What I would say as we come to this, the last council meeting before the election, Lord Mayor, I just wanted to say that Plymouth is a city that has defended Britain, has shaped our national story, and stood strong in times of challenge. And right here, right now, Plymouth Labour, this Labour administration is getting things done. We're bringing real investment into the city, creating jobs and opportunities for local people with apprenticeships and training that lead to good, secure work for people and their families. We're building the infrastructure that Plymouth needs, not just houses, but first-class public spaces. One of the UK's largest city centre play areas, more GP and dental appointments, and the facilities growing families deserve. We're creating more facilities for our young people, refurbishing youth clubs, creating new youth spaces at our community farm and at Tinside Lido. We're improving playgrounds, strengthening support for care leavers, and delivering more help for children with SEND. We're back in a thriving city centre, cutting empty shops by 1/3, increasing footfall by more than the national average, getting the Armada Way project back on track, and bringing world-class culture, arts and events back to the heart of Plymouth. And we're getting the basics right. Cleaner streets, 50,000 trees planted and more than 15,000 potholes filled, because everyday services matter. Plymouth Labour's getting things done, investing, building infrastructure and delivering high quality services. And we're saying, as this polling day approaches, don't risk the progress that we are making by voting for reform, who say what they think you want to hear, but simply don't deliver. Don't take my word for it. You can see it right across the country in the councils that they now run. Don't let their chaos come to our city. We need to keep moving forward together. Since reform celebrated a triumph at last May's local elections, Lord Mayor, some 75, or virtually 10% of reform councillors have either resigned, been expelled, or are facing criminal prosecution. I don't think we need that kind of chaos in our city, do we? It's, if you read that list of 75 reform councillors, it's the worst game of snog, marry or avoid that you could possibly have. And this week, I think the leader of Worcester Council is getting a vote of no confidence. I mean, promised massive cuts to council tax, actually delivered a rise. In fact, there hasn't been a reform council that has managed to cut the council tax since promising last year that they would. So on May the 7th, and I would say this, wouldn't I, vote Labour.
Thank you, Leader. Do any Cabinet members have any announcements? If so, please make it known by raising your hand and I will call you to speak. Councillor Hayden.
I'll come close, Chris. Okay. I'm on now? We're playing hokey cokey, Lord Mayor. I do apologise. Okay, so I'm pleased to share that Plymouth will be launching a new 6-month pilot offering free bus transport for survivors of domestic abuse, working with Plymouth City Bus, Stagecoach West at South West, Plymouth City Council. The new I can't say it now. I can't say it. Domestic abuse, thank you. Community service led by First Light. This scheme will provide 50 free 28-day tickets to help survivors reach housing appointments, legal support, counselling, school and work and other essential services. The aim is to remove the transport barrier, support people, safety and independence, and strengthen our citywide response to domestic abuse. The pilot will closely be monitored and will be reviewed in 3 to 6 months, and both bus companies will also receive a domestic abuse bystander training to help make our transport network even safer and more supportive. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Penberthy.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. At the council meeting in November, I informed you about work on the Guildhall and promised to provide a further update in the first part of this year. I'm pleased to be able to do that for you now. As a reminder, the Guildhall is an 1870s shell containing an inserted 1950s interior with both elements listed and no detailed plans available of the works that were done post-war. I informed you that the renovations to the building were linked to the university plans to bring a conference centre to the lower segment of the Civic and had been specified for this purpose. However, that plan is not going forward, and so we were taking the opportunity to ensure we did the works properly. I thought you might like to get a flavour of the work that our contractors tech have already done. In the entrance and reception areas, modern and out-of-keeping insertions have been removed. Restoration of the decorative fluted timbers, curved ceilings, and the marble and terrazzo walls have been undertaken. Also on the ground floor, all of the toilets have been totally refurbished and new accessible toilets and baby change facilities installed. This has entailed installing new air handling, drainage, and water systems. In the Great Hall, structural steelwork has been installed in the roof to support a new lighting gantry, and the kitchen has been stripped back and prepared for new equipment to be fitted. The first floor reception area has had a substantially larger bar installed, with improved cellar, storage, preparation, and cleaning areas created. The hexagonal roof lights have been repaired, the marble and terrazzo walls cleaned, the fluted timber paneling has been restored, unsympathetic insertions removed, walls replastered, and new toilets installed, as well as a platform lift being provided. On the lower ground floor, all of the toilets have been replaced with new gender-neutral and accessible facilities, and the lift is currently being refurbished. In total, 17 new toilets have been installed, substantially increasing the previous capacity. Additionally, we have installed 57 metres of cabling. That's far enough to get all the way to Exeter, as well as over 500 new LED lights, including over 250 new emergency lights, and over 420 fire alarm devices across a network of 6 control panels, all to get the building compliant to the latest fire and wiring standards. Outside, targeted roof and window replacements have been completed. I would like to thank Tech for all of the great work they have done so far. They're now working with us and our insurers to formally bring the current contract to its natural conclusion, ensuring the Guildhall is safe and secure, and that complex paperwork around insurance liabilities and warranties of installed equipment and features are complete. This is expected to take 3 months and will put us in place ready to start the next stages of works to the building. We have begun to fully scope and deliver on building fabric repairs, such as fire strategy works dealing with the voids, fire doors and compartmentation. We're replacing end-of-life roofs and cracked, damaged external render, installing new heating and ventilation systems, as well as looking at what needs to be undertaken to provide safe access for future inspections and repairs, as well as improving accessibility for the public. We will take this time to see what future works we can bring forward, such as installing refurbished lifts and asbestos removal from ventilation ducting, services separation works, etc., all in order to avoid having to undertake major works after the building reopens. We anticipate the tender for these works being issued and contracts let in the second half of this year. Lord Mayor, what started out as a project to add some bells and whistles onto existing facilities for venue hirers has morphed into a more complex scheme. We have some incredible opportunities on the horizon with the City of Culture bid and the City Living Framework. The Guildhall is a key part of both of those and is no longer just a repair and decoration project, but a reimagination and reinvention of the building for the future. We need to think about what's right for the people of Plymouth now, what's right for tomorrow's residents, particularly new city centre residents, and what's right for Plymouth. We're now on a slightly different journey, but one I'm excited about. We need to be more ambitious. The city is crying out for a high-quality large venue space, one that meets modern demands, and we need to get this right so that it lasts for another 70 years. We have commissioned Counterculture, whose clients include the V&A, the National Portrait Gallery, and the award-winning Box, to shape the vision and future business case for the Guildhall in the context of the prospect of thousands of new residents in the city centre. Whether the venue could become the go-to happening place for emerging talent, or whether other uses could be explored. They will present a series of proposals to the council which will be explored with city residents as part of a community conversation this summer. There are a lot of questions which we do currently not have the answers to. We believe there is a need for a multi-use entertainment venue, but we know we need to do more homework, talk to comparable venues about what works and what gets bums on seats and feet dancing on the floor. Lord Mayor, we all know that the Guildhall is an incredible building whose time will come again. We hope that you and our residents will be encouraged and reassured by the progress so far. We hope there'll be a lot of engagement with us during our community conversation this summer as we shape our renewed ambition and vision for the Guildhall to come back to life again. Thank you.
Councillor John Stevens.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Royal Parade's modernised environment, larger bus shelters and new real-time passenger information boards look great. And I'm sure Councillor Ricketts is pleased that my pledge to get it finished on time and in budget has been delivered. The public have shared their positive comments, and bus drivers say they no longer queue when arriving or departing their stops, and that the punctuality of journeys has improved. I'm also aware of feedback from some bus users about the new bus stop allocations, particularly from those whose buses have remained on Mayflower Street. I'm grateful to members who have brought this to my attention and residents who have contacted me directly. Because bus users are rightly at the heart of our bus service improvement plan, I have listened to these concerns and am therefore pleased to advise members that the Plymouth Enhanced Bus Partnership between us and the bus operators will shortly commence a review of the bus stop allocations in light of the feedback we have received. I will update members on the conclusion of the review in order to implement identified changes as soon as possible. Members, you will know that I value and champion the commitment to provide quality infrastructure and opportunity to help people of all abilities to be able to safely walk, cycle and wheel across our city. Dawes Lane off Elberton Road is a key but poor off-road walking and cycling link between Plymouth and Brixton in the South Hams. After many of years have been in the pipeline, work to upgrade started 3 weeks ago and will be finished in May. The uneven, extremely waterlogged and muddy surface will be transformed by surface improvements and the addition of a drainage channel. Because of secured funds from the nearby Sherford development and government grants, it is happening because of a Labour council, a council that works not just for Plymouth residents, but for residents who live in our neighbouring South Hams too. The cycling and walking path that currently runs from Lara Rail Bridge past Saltram Meadow in Plymstock and used on average by 750 daily users is in the process of being extended with the opening of the blocked-off bridge under Coldstone Hill. The traffic-free and accessible path will cater for all sorts of walkers and cyclists. The project forms part of a 3-kilometre route from Lara Rail Bridge to Sherford and featured in the Joint Local Plan and Plymouth Local Cycling and Walking Infrastructure Plan. Constructing this stage around and through a tunnel, as you may have read, is complex. However, council officers and I are doing everything we can to reduce the inconvenience caused to local residents during the duration of the works and the diversion they have to make during the necessary closure of the southbound access on Coldstone Hill. There are more projects to help people move safely and actively that are scheduled to be completed in the next 18 months or so, thanks to our investment of £750,000 from our Consolidated Active Travel Fund. And this includes the Brian Vincent Way, the walking and cycling path that will connect Willow Close in Crabtree to Pike Road in Efford, which will get underway in the coming months. The pathway is named in honour of our late former member Brian, who devoted his life as a councillor to the people of Efford and Lipson, and for whom enabling people to access and enjoy the local environment was so important. And finally, Lord Mayor, in his absence, I would like to thank Paul Barnard, the Service Director for Strategic Director for for Strategic Planning and Infrastructure, who has served this city for 35 years as a boy and a bit of an older boy. He retires in May, and actually so much of the infrastructure around our city has Paul's fingerprints on it. He turned a failing planning department into an award-winning one. He's had multiple recognition of honours from the industry and his fellow professionals, and he was awarded an MBE for services to city development in 2020. So I wish Paul, on behalf of all members here, I'm sure, a happy, well-deserved retirement and best wishes for his future endeavours, and thank him for the legacy that he leaves in our city that we can all see and enjoy. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Do any other cabinet members or chairs of committees have any announcements? Councillor?
It's important, Lord Mayor, that we pay tribute to Hilary Lade. We've been getting a lot of good news about the box lately. My colleague, Councillor Lang, is making sure of that. And endless stories about touching people's lives, whether it's a major show or working out a community project. I want to talk about one of the most important people on our journey with the box. Probably most people probably wouldn't have heard of Hilary Lade. She passed in February. At the beginning of the box, there was a very small group of people who came together as a shadow board. Way before we'd secured any lottery money, there was Pete Smith, Ian Bowyer, Glenn Jordan, Richard Bailey from South West Image Bank, Bob Sharp from Swifter, the Film and Television Archive, as well as myself and a small group of officers led by Dave Draffan. Now, as part of securing the lottery money, we had to host a major visit from the National Board of the Heritage Lottery Fund. These visits made or broke high-profile projects, and that's when we first met Hilary. Hilary was an HLF National Board member and been assigned as a sponsor for our project. Hilary's role was to assess our bid, but much more importantly, to then present it on our behalf to the National Committee. Very scary, that bit of delegation, let me tell you. We took Hilary on a marathon visit to all our heritage sites, trying to impress her on the importance of the box. But from the minute Hilary arrived, she was engaged. Detailed, serious, and very thorough, but completely focused on the people. As part of the visit, we had asked the head of the local history society to bring a few committee members to meet HLF assessors. Well, little did we know that she'd brought 50 extremely passionate and retired friends. As we opened the door into the old museum shop to have a 5-minute natter on the way to lunch, I don't know who was more shocked, us or Hilary. She blew our visit timeline out of the water. She made sure she spoke to all of them. And it was in that moment that we saw something special. Some who passionately believed in the power of heritage and its impact on all of our everyday lives. Hilary presented our case to the board, and the rest is history. Plymouth became the only place to get National Lottery funding bid for the first time of asking. But Hilary's story didn't end there. After we'd secured the money, we asked Hilary if she'd join the box shadow board. She took a little persuading, made it clear to us that if she came on the board, she would hold us all to account on behalf of the lottery players and Plymouthians. Hilary sat on the board from 2017 to 2026 when she stepped down due to ill health. Time on the board is where we really got the full impact of Hilary's input, really. We were struggling to get the vision right in the early days. She was passionate about Plymouth, gave us confidence that in thinking about Plymouth's DNA, Dockyard, Navy and Argyle, that we're on the right lines, gentle firmness that commanded respect. She made critical interventions which profoundly shaped the box and its success today. And she always championed the staff and spoke truth to power. So it was about the passion, the humility, and the love of heritage. I'll never forget that. So what I'm going to do, Lord Mayor, is on behalf of the council, I want to formally and write to her, thank the amazing contribution Hilary made to Plymouth and to the box. Her contribution is huge and will be felt in this city for a very long time indeed. So our thoughts are now with Mark and the family. And Hilary's funeral, if people want to attend, is at St Andrews on the 27th of March at 2 p.m. Thank you, and thank you, Hilary.
Does anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Aspinall.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. A couple of good bits of information, I think, for Council. 1 month after opening, the Plymouth City Centre dental practice has already been making meaningful difference for patients struggling to access dental care. Since welcoming their first patient on the 9th of February 26, the practice has delivered nearly 1,000 dental appointments, including treating people for urgent care referred through NHS 111. And they have issues like pain, infection, and dental trauma. The service is run by the Peninsula Dental Social Enterprise in partnership with the University of Plymouth. It's designed to help address the growing demand for urgent dental care, while also providing valuable hands-on experience for the next generation of dental professionals. The practice has been developed to help deliver up to 12,000 appointments per year, helping improve access to care while also strengthening the training opportunities available to Peninsula dental students. The facility contains 13 single surgeries, which are occupied on rotation by final year students from the University of Plymouth's dental surgery and dental therapy and hygiene programs, working under the close supervision of qualified dentist professionals called clinical supervisors, alongside the team of qualified clinicians, including dental therapist, dentist and dentist in foundation core training and a foundation dentist, a lot of dentists. Until recently, PDSE operated from 4 clinics across Devon and Cornwall, with 2 in Plymouth, 1 in Truro and 1 in Exeter. Within those clinics, more than 430 dental students worked alongside experienced staff to hone their skills, and in the past year they have provided well over 35,000 appointments to more than 8,000 patients. Those facilities are already running at capacity, so the new practice enables more students to learn the skills they will need to succeed in their careers. The practice will also provide a fundamental different way of teaching experience from the existing facilities by expanding clinical teaching in a setting that stimulates a real dentist surgery, as opposed from a large teaching facility. And we will let you know the address that you can go and have a look at more. And secondly, Lord Mayor, we've been following this very closely. It's the Plymouth Community Diagnostic Centre, which is down in Frankfurt Gate, in Colin Campbell car park. Well, you'll be pleased to know that the scaffolding's coming down, and the front of the building features brick, as you've all seen driving past it, while the rear is finished with a distinctive pattern cladding system. Inside the building, work continues at a pace to internally fit out and install specialist diagnostic equipment. They've got 120 contractors working at site each day. The project remains on programme, with construction due to be completed in May, and the first patients will be welcomed in June. The new diagnostic centre is set to transform access to diagnostic testing across Plymouth and the wider peninsula. Located in the West End, the centre will play a key role in regenerating the city centre, while significantly improving access to vital diagnostic tests. Its central location offers patients the convenience of nearby shopping and leisure facilities, as well as having ample parking at the Western Approach car park. John, I'm sure you'll be pleased with that. When fully operational, the centre will see up to 330 patients a day, delivering around 91,600 imaging tests each year, alongside a similar number of other diagnostic tests. Recruitment is underway for 130 staff who will support this exciting new service. Teams from phlebotomy, audiology, imaging and physical measurements have visited the cycle to review their future workspaces. They have been working closely with BAM Construction and construction consultants Ward Williams, who are providing expert help to finalise the building internally as well as externally. We want a really good experience for patients, and that hopefully is coming to fruition. Once open, the Community Diagnostic Centre will provide a comprehensive range of tests, scans and checks in a convenient city centre setting, and the buses will be stopping outside. So there'll be CT, MRI scans, ultrasound, X-ray, cardiology, electrocardiograms, vascular ultrasound, ambulatory blood pressure monitoring, pheno and lung tests. I'm not too sure what the pheno is. ECGs, EEGs, a pacemaker clinic, simple field tests such as doing the 6-minute walk on a treadmill, spirometry, including bronchodilator response, and sleep investigations. So these will then be able to be released from Derriford Hospital to make diagnosis closer to home much faster. So we look forward to hearing that magic word in May and June when they're open. But a big thank you to everybody that's been involved with this. Mark Lowry being supportive, finding the sites, and then the staff that have been brilliant at keeping us well informed. So thank you, Lord Mayor, for the time.
Thank you. I move on to item number 7, the Lord Morality 2026 to 2027. Councillor Dan, would you like to introduce the report?
Lord Mayor. I'm pleased to introduce the minutes and report of the Lord Mayor Selection Advisory Committee, which was held on the 12th of February, in which the committee considered nominations for the Lord Morality for the municipal year of 26-27. As set out in the minutes, the committee had reviewed and updated and have a much more open, transparent nomination process. Following all the considerations, we unanimously agreed to recommend that Councillor Kevin Sproston should be appointed as Lord Mayor for the coming year. Councillor Sproston attended the meeting and warmly, thankfully, accepted the nomination with his normal gratitude. Before Council is invited to endorse that recommendation, though, I would also like to take this moment to formally acknowledge and thank you, Lord Mayor, Councillor Cathy Watkins. Throughout your term, Councillor Watkins, you have served the Lord Mayoralty with dedication, dignity, and a great commitment to the civic life of our city. So on behalf of the Council, I would just like to extend our sincere appreciation for your outstanding service during the course of the year. Before I move on though, because we had this lovely, open, transparent way of working, I've actually got Councillor Sproston's nomination form. And I think for a change, I'm just going to read out a few of the things that Councillor Sproston put in that nomination form to show that he is a worthy nomination to be our next Lord Mayor. He served 20 years in the Royal Navy, serving in both Basra and Kuwait. He also owns some hairdressing salons in Plymouth, who knew? But those salons reached the Plymouth Business Awards finals for corporate social responsibility, again showing his value to the community. And he also won an award from Improving Lives for having a special autism hour within that salon for those vulnerable people who needed an extra service. After he left the Navy, he started the Neighbourhood Watch in Plymouth. The Keam Group achieved the Queen's Award for Volunteering Services in 2022-23, and I was Lord Mayor then, and I was able to go along and make the presentation. And we also planted a tree for the Queen's tree. The group also won nationally the Neighbourhood Watch, which is voted by the public, which is very, very special when you award a national award that is voted for by the public, because it really shows the appreciation of what he's done. Kevin also founded Hidden Lives, which is a charity for people with disability. He was a named fundraiser for a year for his work with junior football, and also was one of the founder members of a lovely Clean Our Patch, which of course are doing lots at the moment for cleaning the city during our Keep Britain Tidy campaign. And if you go outside now and you see the angel, Kevin was instrumental in bringing the knife angel, the travelling statue, to Plymouth. He's also an operations manager for a not-for-profit wholesale food organisation, which has 96 member organisations delivering free food right across the city. So I think Kevin has shown already that he has a commitment to Plymouth. He works hard to improve the lives of Plymothians. He can work with social enterprises. He's value-driven, innovative, inclusive, acts with integrity, and has got a proven track record of delivery. So I would like to recommend that we support Kevin's nomination, and I think with that skill set, I think he's going to have an absolutely brilliant year as he takes over the Lord Mayoralty at the AGM in May. So I would ask Council to accept the minutes and to appoint a nomination for next year's Lord Mayor as Councillor Kevin Sproston.
Councillor Evans, I understand you are seconding the report.
Yeah, not much to add to that. Fulsome tribute to Councillor Sproston. His work at the bridge is amazing. The number of people that organisation now helps to feed in Plymouth is incalculable. And I'm looking forward to bringing that passion and drive and commitment and energy to the Lord Mayoralty. His idea that we replace prayers with a selection of heavy metal classics, though, I would say perhaps if he could lay that one off for a bit. But I think he will be an exceptional Lord Mayor, and we'll hear details in due course about his charity ambitions for for his year in office. But if he brings as much energy to fundraising for that than he does to everything else in his life, they will indeed be well set for the future. So I'm delighted to add my support to the work of the committee, and their thanks to you too. I dare say at the annual general meeting we'll have a few more words to say about your performance this year, Lord Mayor, but certainly in here you've been a great chair, and thank you for what you've done. Yes, please, will you all please vote unanimously for Councillor Sproston? Thank you.
Does anybody else wish to speak? Councillor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you for allowing me to speak. I was delighted at the Lord Mayor Selection Committee to second the nomination for Kevin, because I worked with Kevin down in Keam during a very dark time for the city, and I found Kevin a very palatable young man. I'm just calling you a young man now. That's because I'm an old lady. I've watched you flourish, and I've watched the work you've done, and I am delighted that I was the one that seconded your nomination for Lord Mayor. And I'm looking forward to hearing some more about you at our AGM. Thank you.
Does anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Dan, would you like to sum up?
I think I'll just wish Kevin, assuming that everyone's going to vote for him, good luck for next year. And again, thank you to you, Lord Mayor, for your year.
We'll move to the vote now. Motion is passed. I move to item number 8, the extension of designation section 151. Oh, sorry. Kevin, would you like to say something?
My Lord Mayor, I would. First of all, I would say to Councillor Sudan, that thing about the salons was secret. This is not the face of beauty, so it's not something I reflect on too much. But my Lord Mayor, my fellow councillors, the people of Plymouth, I stand before you today with immense gratitude and overflowing pride and a deep sense of responsibility as I accept the honour of being recognised as the new upcoming Lord Mayor of Plymouth. Whilst I have this opportunity to speak, I would like to delve into a small part of my history. At the age of 16, I joined the Navy. Might have mentioned that a few times. And it was coming to Plymouth that really changed my life, and my eyes awoke by the city, the people and the energy. Plymouth, I loved it all. At 18, 19, I was fast on my way to becoming a wannabe Janner, eating my Captain Jaster's burgers on the weekend, having a pint in the Navy pub with a few other pit stops in the Barbican, followed by a night on the tiles down the famous Union Street, and on occasion looking to meet the love of my life in the local nightclub, Jester's. Spoiler alert, that wasn't where I met the love of my life. If you said to that young man that one day he would be the mayor of this beautiful city, he would have died laughing. But you see, that's Plymouth. That's the magic of Plymouth. Plymouth is a magic place. It pulses with potential. It's not just a city, but it's a community in spirit. It has a community in spirit, the Janner spirit. It feeds and it grows confidence. It embraces the lost and nurtures talent, and I believe that in my heart. I wouldn't be in this position if I didn't. To be entrusted with this role in our vibrant city is a dream come true. Plymouth is a place of rich heritage, a beacon of innovation, and it has a community whose spirit, in my opinion, is unrivaled. And as I look ahead to the responsibilities this office will bring, I am reminded of the countless individuals who have come before me, leaders, visionaries, and everyday heroes who built this city into what it is today. I would like to say a quick few thank yous. First and foremost to my mother for being the most resilient and mentally tough person I've ever known, and that's just not for bringing me up. My dad for being my hero, my poor outstanding girlfriend, Virginia, for always encouraging me to pursue dreams, overcome obstacles. My ward wing woman, currently filming, Councillor Simpson, for all of her support. Councillor Coker, my friend and original mentor, having talked me into becoming a councillor in the first place. You see, I thought being a councillor was probably for the privileged, the privately educated, and the few. And whilst it's great to have some of those attributes, I found that being a councillor is for the passionate, the hard-working, and those with a desire in their hearts to create and make Plymouth a better place for their loved ones, neighbours, and unmet friends. And in the coming months, that's exactly what I plan to do. By listening to your hopes, your challenges, your aspirations, I will work tirelessly to ensure that I hear as many voices in this brilliant city, from the most established businesses to the youngest dreamers in schools. I'm really excited to meet as many people as I can and hear the stories and passion from the people of Plymouth. I believe we have a lot to be excited about this year. And in the coming months, I wish to shine a light on the unsung heroes of this city, highlight the creativity in our arts and the resilience in our neighbourhoods. I plan to make as many people outside of Plymouth know that Plymouth isn't just known for its beauty and history, but its inclusiveness, its ambition, and its sense of community. So from the bottom of my heart, I thank you. I thank you for your trust, everyone's belief in me, cross-party as well, and for the incredible opportunity you've given me to serve. And on that note of serving, I will finish my speech by stating that no mayor serves alone. So I'd like to formally announce that my deputy mayor will be the fantastic Councillor Angela Penrose. Angela, you are kind and smart and have a reserved grace that is admired throughout. I believe you're going to be an excellent Deputy Lord Mayor, and I look forward to working together into a bright future for Plymouth side by side. I have every confidence you'll be a terrific ambassador for the role in this city. And whilst I'm in the mood for announcing, he doesn't know it, poor Stephen behind me, Stephen Bell from Restored Church is going to be my chaplain. And I thank him for accepting this role. I love his energy, his positivity, and his community mindset. And I feel confident he's going to do a fantastic job. And to everyone in this room, I will strive to be fair, just, and reward you for your trust you have placed in me. Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Sproston. May I add my congratulations to you and also to Councillor Penrose, who will be your deputy. I think you'll be a brilliant pair. Thank you. Right, now we move on to item number 8, the extension of the designation of the Section 151 officer. Councillor Evans, would you like to introduce the report?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll do that on behalf of Councillor Evans, as I'm the report holder. So sort of bring everybody back to earth now after Kevin's wonderful introduction and accepting the role of Lord Mayor for the next municipal year. We do need to make another appointment, Lord Mayor, in that members will be aware that the interim arrangements for the post of Service Director for Finance. This post normally includes the responsibilities of the Section 151 officer. And at the meeting on the 26th of January 2026, Council approved the delegation of the Section 151 officer responsibility to Mr. David Norvey. We'd like to extend this delegation for a further period of time until the 11th of June 2026, thus enabling us to consider recruitment options for the post. So therefore, I'm asking Council to extend the delegation of the Section 151 officer to Mr. David Norvey until the 11th of June 2026, please, Lord Mayor. Thank you.
Councillor Evans, will you be seconding?
Formally second, Lord Mayor.
Does anybody else wish to speak? Councillor, do you want to sum up? Shall we go to the vote? Motion is carried. So we move on to item number 9, motions on notice. 9A, the future provision of sexual assault referral centre in Plymouth. Councillor Hayden, would you like to introduce the motion?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Members, I bring this motion to Council today, which is my final motion, as after serving 20 years as a councillor in the St Buda ward, I have decided to retire from politics at the forthcoming election in May. But we have something more important in front of us today. We have a chance to stand by and support victims of sexual violence in our city. So I ask members to support this motion, because every victim has the right to services that they need at a time and a place that makes it easy for them when they are dealing with such a trauma. As this motion states, the NHS are looking at closing the medical examination suite here in Plymouth and relocating it to Bodmin. This is not acceptable to expect victims to travel to Bodmin from Plymouth, which would incur a journey in a police car or by public transport, for example, a taxi. We already know how difficult it can be for victims to come forward, so why would we want to accept this proposal and make it more difficult for them to access the service, which in turn could subject them to a 3-hour round trip? I am full aware that due to my persistent campaigning on this matter, they will offer a face-to-face service to support the victims of sexual violence. However, for the forensic and the medical examination that would be required to gain the evidence to go forward for a prosecution, they would need to go to Bodmin. We can only imagine how harrowing this would be for victims and survivors. In 2017, we ran a campaign to save a service here in Plymouth, and we were successful in getting a new building, but now they are saying that due to the upgrade of the required accreditation, it would be more financially and beneficial for it to be run from Bodmin. I say to you, Lord Mayor, and members, who would that be beneficial for? It would definitely not be for the victims of such serious crime. So members, I ask you to do the right thing today. Put politics aside and think of our victims by supporting this motion. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Rainsford, I understand you'll be seconding the motion. Do you wish to speak now or reserve your right?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll reserve my right.
Councillor Riley.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. And thank you, Sally. There's always so much passion in what you do. This is a difficult one for me, because of course it would be preferable to have a clinical and forensic SARC unit in Plymouth. We have been pioneering VORG work for some time now, and has been a real privilege for me to be part of this work alongside Sally and Charlotte and Rebecca, both on the ground in my day job and through activism and in this chamber. Over the many years of doing this work, I have learned that the voices of survivors and victims are not always felt to be heard. Those of us who work with people affected by sexual violence try very hard to ensure those voices are represented. And sometimes those things are hard to listen to and hard to give out. So when it comes to something as important as this decision, I believe it's vital to listen to professionals working directly in this field. I have spoken with many colleagues I have worked with alongside for years, as well as with representatives from the NHS on this, and the proposal for a 2-SARC model has been put forward by the NHS in order to comply with the standards set by Forensic Science Regulator. At present, Plymouth and Truro cannot meet the FSR standards introduced in 2025, and even with significant capital investment, this is at risk. This raises the risk that evidence could potentially become inadmissible in court. For that reason, the proposal to create a state-of-the-art SARC facility to work alongside Exeter, located somewhere between Plymouth and Truro, is considered by the NHS and professionals to be a viable option. Children have been attending the Exeter SARC for some years now, and that, I understand, will not change. Bodmin has been used only as an indicative location to model travel times and access. But to my knowledge, no final decision has been made on the location. This clearly requires engagement, and I very much hope to be involved in that process alongside the voices of those affected by sexual violence. It is important to remember that the proposed new site will primarily serve the forensic function of testing and medical investigation, and that those in need of the service would be accompanied to the site by vetted police representatives at no cost to the individual. The other crucial part of the SARC model is offered to survivors and those impacted by sexual violence, is the support that is offered. My understanding is that this support could take place here in our city through a hub of support services such as First Light. This could potentially bring them all together for adults and for children and young people working alongside these organisations. I have spoken previously about the importance of improving support for our children in this area, and I am encouraged by the possibility that this model could achieve that. If services are delivered locally in a support hub, it could reduce travel time for survivors accessing support and allow professionals to see more face-to-face, as lots of our support is currently provided over the phone. However, I feel there are so many questions to be answered here, and there's not enough information yet about what this change could really mean for our city and the survivors within it and other areas of the peninsula. What happens if the site does close? What happens if the site does not close? If we were to oppose the closure, what would that mean for the support services that are being championed to be delivered all under one roof? Would that model still be possible? As I understand it, this change would not happen for at least 18 months, and while a new location is being identified, the Plymouth site will remain open. Given the time frame, I wonder if there is an opportunity for this to be brought to scrutiny so that members can properly examine the options, understand the implications, and ensure that we are making a fully informed decision. I believe it is essential to fully understand what this decision entails before moving forward. I am not comfortable voting on this either way without further information. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Councillor Beer.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It wasn't my intention to actually stand and speak this afternoon, but Councillor Hayden and myself stood side by side in 2017, fighting for children to be examined here in Plymouth. And as we've heard from our colleague this afternoon, Councillor Riley, they now have to travel to Exeter. Now, a complicated forensic examination of somebody who's gone through a sexual experience and violence is not a pleasant one, Lord Mayor, by no means. Evidence can get lost in transporting a person from A to B. But I really do feel that the women in this city deserve to have their own facility here in the city so that they can be examined forensically, promptly, and allowed to go home afterwards to recover from their incidents. So I support Councillor Hayden's motion today. Thank you.
Councillor Holloway.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I want to begin by thanking Councillor Hayden and Councillor Rainsford for bringing this motion forward. And I want to also acknowledge huge thanks, and I think from many of my colleagues, to the tremendous work that Sally Hayden, Councillor Hayden, has done in this area and many others in her 20 years of service to this council. Your legacy will go on a long time after you walk out of this chamber, so thank you. This motion, if I may say so, is very polite. It's beautifully well-mannered and classy. Exactly the kind of thoughtful and measured motion and contribution these two councillors always bring to the chamber. But I have to be honest, I am angry because the institutions we pay for, that we pay our taxes for, the institutions that are supposed to defend us, protect us, and support the most vulnerable in our society should never even be considering proposals like this. We are talking about victims of rape, people who have already had control taken away from them. And when proposals like this are even tabled, let alone formally put forward, they send a message. They generate headlines that say to victims, if you come forward, if you try to seek justice, the system might make things harder for you. After everything we've said in this chamber over the years about violence against women and girls, that should be deeply troubling, because we already know how difficult it is for many victims to come forward and report these crimes. We know how much courage it takes. And we know that every single barrier we place in someone's path can be the difference between someone coming forward or deciding that it simply isn't worth it. So let's be honest about what's being proposed. Someone in Plymouth could be told that the next step to getting help after a rape is to travel to Bodmin for a forensic examination. Lord Mayor, how many people in this chamber regularly go to Bodmin? Could you get there on a teenager's pocket money? Because many victims are young, many victims don't have a car, many are frightened, traumatised, and already unsure that whether they even want to report what has happened to them. And Lord Mayor, with respect, if we all thought back to when we were 16 years old, would you have felt comfortable making your way to Bodmin after something traumatic had happened to you? Because that's what we're really talking about here. And that's why I have to ask, after everything we have said in this chamber about violence against women and girls, how can proposals like this even be on the table? What message do we think this sends to victims? How could this possibly be considered acceptable? Councillor Riley raises some important points. Thank you, Zoe. And I think it does raise many important questions. I also want to understand how we got here. Who made these decisions, why, and what has happened, given that the money we've invested in those services, designed specifically to support victims of sexual violence, if we are now discussing closing them, we must invest, not withdraw. Plymouth is a major regional city. We have Darrowford, we serve communities across Devon and Cornwall. We have experience supporting victims across a wide geography. Removing this service from Plymouth, as Councillor Hayden has said, is simply unacceptable. So yes, of course we should write the letter. But let's be clear, a strongly worded letter is not enough. Plymouth must not become a city where the next step to getting help is a long journey away. We stand with victims, and I hope every councillor in this chamber today will say the same. Thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I rise also to support Councillor Hayden's motion because at its core, this is about access to justice, dignity for victims and fairness for Plymouth, all things that Sally has championed over the last 2 decades in public service. The role of a SARC in this city cannot and should not be underestimated. It provides forensic medical examinations and a safe environment for people who have experienced sexual violence at one of the most traumatic moments of their life. For many survivors, this is their first step towards justice, towards recovery, and towards being believed. When we talk about move-in services like this to areas like Bodmin, we're not talking about routine administrative change. We're talking about people who have experienced trauma being asked to travel further, wait longer, and face additional barriers at the moment that they most need support. For someone who has just experienced sexual assault, every additional hurdle matters. And as someone who has survived sexual violence, I know that the decision to come forward, to seek help, to report what has happened to you, can be one of the most difficult decisions a person will make. It takes enormous courage simply to walk through the door of a service like this. So the last thing the system should be doing is placing more distance, more delay, or more barriers in that person's path. For me, the question that we should be asking is a simple one. Will these proposals make it easier or harder for victims to access the care and forensic support that they need? If the answer to that question is it makes it harder, then we absolutely should pause and look again. When someone in Plymouth experiences one of the most traumatic events imaginable, they should be able to access specialist forensic support close to home, quickly, and with dignity. Because at the moment someone needs those services, the system should be doing everything possible to remove barriers, not to create new ones.
Councillor Finn.
Yeah, just to say that we on this side fully support this motion, above all the spirit of this motion as well. Plymouth has lost enough. You know, we lost the coroner's court recently to Exeter. We don't want to lose any more services, especially services that support the most vulnerable in our society at a time they are most in need. Needless to say also that we wish Councillor Hayden well in her future career when she leaves this chamber today.
Councillor Rainsford, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. We've heard during this debate some very powerful and emotional arguments for this service to remain in the city. Councillor Riley spoke from the heart and from experience about the need for victims' voices to be heard, and it's vital that Plymouth's needs and voices are listened to as part of this process. Councillor Beer spoke of her long-standing support for the SARC, and I'd like to thank Councillor Holloway, who is also standing down and will be deeply missed by this chamber, for her commitment and passion for the support of victims and the need to get the service they deserve. She made a very strong case for retaining a SARC in Plymouth. Councillor Taylor pointed out the risks of underestimating the importance of the SARC service, and I thank Councillor Finn for his support for the retention of the service. There is no doubt the main reason that the current proposal is being put forward is simply that currently 2 sites in Cornwall do not meet forensic standards. All of the potential proposals have a monetary cost, and what really mustn't be ignored is the human cost. 77 Plymouth residents received support and forensic testing in the last year. Would all of those 77 have got in a cab, on a train, even a car, to travel a considerable distance in order to be tested after a sexual assault or a rape? Being tested is traumatic enough on top of the horror of a sexual attack. It's deeply concerning that if the SARC is not easily accessible in our city, that some victims might not come forward. And of course, what that means is that perpetrators walking away, able to perhaps attack or abuse again. That's simply not acceptable. The emotional stress this places on victims can be unbearable, and we already know there's a very significant number of suicides which result from this type of abuse. Now, I understand the NHS, and I listened to Councillor Riley with interest, are saying that advocacy and support will continue and possibly be enhanced. Our representations need to press for this to continue, but I do not want to stand by and allow this valuable forensic asset to be withdrawn from Plymouth without a fight. I'm pleased that the Cabinet member, Councillor Hayden, feels the same, has been standing up for victims and has brought forward this motion. She and her tenacity will be missed from this chamber. I would urge cross-party support and appreciate the speeches in the chamber today have been wholly supportive. I second this motion.
Councillor Hayden, would you like to sum up, please?
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, members, for the debate you have given this motion. Lord Mayor, if you will allow me, I would just like to pick a few points that was raised, and I would just like to give some reassurance or not so. Councillor Riley, you spoke very passionately, and I know you championed for our women in our city for many years. But can I just be very clear? It doesn't need to be Bodmin, and it is Bodmin they're talking about. It can be in our city. When you go out these doors, it's a huge city, loads of development going on. So we could have that here. So just that's one point. The second point is, yes, they will have a support worker in that police car or in that public transport, that taxi. That support worker is a stranger in a strange place, already on top of what they're dealing with. So, and also, I didn't want to correct you, Councillor Finn, and very kind words you said, but can I just correct you if you don't mind, as it's my last council meeting? We have a coroner's service here in Plymouth. It is still here. There's a coroner's court. It's up by the registry office. So I just don't want any confusion in case people are a little bit confused on that, but very kind words. I would like to finally say, Lord Mayor, I would like to thank Luke Pollard for all his support and his dedication in making sure that victims are put first. And more importantly, I would like to say to every victim watching here today that I stand with you and I will not back down until you get what you deserve in this city. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. We'll move to the vote now using the buttons on your keypad. Motion is carried. We now move to item 9B, in support of the Royal British Legion Keep the Covenant Promise campaign. Councillor Murphy, would you like to introduce the motion?
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I am proud today to rise in strong support of this motion and in clear solidarity with the Royal British Legion and its Keep the Covenant Promise campaign. As President of the Royal British Legion Crownhill branch, it would be remiss of me if I didn't. The Armed Forces Covenant is not just a document, it is a promise made by the nation to the men and women who have served, and their families. A promise that they should face no disadvantage because of their service, and that where sacrifice has been greatest, our support must be strongest. The promise was first given legal weight in 2011, strengthened again in 2021, and from 2022 placed a real duty on public bodies, including councils like ours, to act. But today, we must be honest, a promise written into law is only meaningful if it is delivered in practice. That is why this moment matters. In January this year, the government published the Armed Forces Bill, signalling its intention to extend the covenant duty across all government departments and into vital areas of everyday life: social care, childcare, housing, and much more. This is welcome, but legislation alone will not change lives unless it is matched with clear guidance, proper funding, public awareness, and accountability. Plymouth understands this better than most. We are a proud Armed Forces city. We signed the covenant over a decade ago. We were honoured to host National Armed Forces Day. We hold the Gold Defence Employer Recognition Scheme Award because we believe that being forces friendly is not symbolic, it is practical, it is cultural, and it is ongoing. So when we say today that we support the Royal British Legion's campaign, we do so with credibility and conviction. This motion asks the leader to write to the Minister for Veterans and People, Louise Sandhurst-Jones MP, with 3 clear and reasonable requests. First, proper statutory guidance and funding. Local authorities cannot be asked to shoulder expanded legal duties without the tools to deliver them. If we want real outcome for veterans and their families, we must resource them properly. Second, a national programme of promotion and awareness. Too many people still do not know what the Armed Forces Covenant is or what it means. Recognition matters, visibility matters, and public understanding strengthens public support. And third, robust monitoring and meaningful redress. If the covenant duty is breached, those affected must have confidence that their voices will be heard and that action will follow. A promise without accountability is no promise at all. Lord Mayor, the men and women of our armed forces accept unlimited liability in service of this country. The least we can do is ensure that when they come home, injured, bereaved, transitioning into civilian life, or raising families, the nation keeps its word. Supporting this motion is about honour, it is about fairness, and it is about turning warm words into lived reality. Let Plymouth once again lead by example. Let us stand with the armed forces community, and let us be clear, the covenant must not only be kept, it must be strengthened, funded and enforced. I urge all members across this chamber to support this motion wholeheartedly. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Councillor Sproston, I understand you will second the motion. Would you like to speak now, or do you want to reserve your right?
I'll speak now, my Lord Mayor. Thank you, Lord Mayor. It's probably not a big surprise that I'm standing here to support the motion today for many reasons. The first, having the delight and opportunity to support Councillor Pauline Murphy. She embodies a firm commitment to champion everything that's military in this city, and as a veteran and military supporter, I thank her for all her hard work and dedication over the years. But secondly, I'm pleased to support the Royal British Legion and throw my backing into keeping of the Covenant promise. Plymouth is a city with a deep and proud connection to our armed forces, and it's part of who we are. For generations, the Royal Navy has been based here at HMS Devonport, playing a vital part of the lives of thousands of serving personnel, veterans and military families living in the city. Their contribution is visible not only in uniform, but in our neighbourhoods, our schools, our workplaces and our communities. Even in this chamber, past and present, we've had a host of veterans on all sides, and many as mayors historically over the year. The military and armed forces is part of the imprint of what Plymouth is. Because of that connection, Plymouth has long taken its responsibilities to the armed forces community seriously and still does. And rightly so, we lead the way, being one of the first early signatories of the Armed Forces Covenant, recognising that those who serve and the families that stand beside them deserve the fairness, respect and support. The Covenant reflects a simple principle that members of the armed forces community should not face disadvantage because of their service. For many people in Plymouth, this is not an abstract idea. It affects real lives of many in all our wards. It affects service personnel moving home frequently and trying to find school places for their children. It affects those leaving and looking for civilian employment. It affects families coping with the pressures of deployment, relocation and uncertainty. And as I said, in a city like ours, we see these challenges firsthand. And for me, this isn't talked enough about. When we talk about the sacrifice of the members of armed forces, it's not just saying they could potentially give up their lives to protect this country, but we're also asking them to potentially miss their kids' first steps, miss anniversaries, birthdays, sometimes funerals and weddings of loved ones. This is a further sacrifice, but of comfort and love, not just of an individual, but from an entire families. I have myself felt some of the pressures of military life. I remember waving goodbye to my friends as a kid, having to move across country with my dad when he was relocated to another base in the military, crying my eyes out for hours at the loss of friends at such a young age I simply didn't understand. Or the strain of new relationships, being away for long periods of time, leading to relationship breakdowns with partners. Or at least that's what I'm going to put it down to. Rather than me snoring, the overplaying a Motorhead, or the many arguments that Monster Munch isn't a suitable meal replacement. It's the distance. But jokes aside, this motion is important, and it's looking to strengthen the covenant and to protect and support families and individuals. As stated, we are already proudly recognised as Gold Award holders under the Defence Employee Recognition Scheme. Our city regular hosts armed forces events, including national celebrations that bring people together in recognition of service and sacrifice. But supporting the armed forces community is not something we should be picking and choosing when to do. It should be throughout and forever. And in this fast, ever-changing world, the pressures on service families do change as well. And the support systems around them must evolve and adapt as well as that. The Armed Forces Covenant is an important tool in making sure that happens. However, commitments only work when they are backed up properly, and this cannot be just lip service, but given the importance, should be enshrined within law. And if we want the covenant to make a real difference, local authorities must have the resources and guidance needed to deliver it effectively as possible, along with a greater public awareness so that veterans and service families know what support exists and how to access it. This is exactly what this motion is calling for. It's not asking for anything unreasonable. The personnel who serve in our armed forces commit themselves fully to the defence of this country. Their families share in that commitment, often making sacrifices that go unseen. Supporting this motion today sends a clear message. It shows that our city continues to stand with the armed forces community, and it states that Plymouth will continue to lead by example and continue to highlight the importance of the Armed Forces Covenant and call for strengthened legislation and support from the government. I hope, colleagues, you will join me in supporting this motion, understand my passion, and as Councillor Murphy says, request the leader writes to the Minister of Veterans. Let us back the Royal British Legion for the benefit of serving personnel, families, and all of its veterans. Thank you.
Councillor Lugger.
I thank you, my Lord Mayor. Plymouth is a garrison town and has played a vital role in supporting the Royal Navy in every major conflict the world has seen since the year 1300. Council recognises Councillor Murphy's hard work with the Royal British Legion and the thanks we as a city owe to the armed forces community, both past and present. The Covenant is of paramount importance and we must strengthen it. This is a wonderful motion. I rise to support this motion in its entirety, and I'm sure that the action points contained therein will take into account the recent changes to the ICB and how veterans across this city gain primary care services. Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Thank you.
Does anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Penberthy.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. And as the portfolio holder responsible, it seems appropriate that I respond. The latest census shows that over 8% of the population of Plymouth said that they were veterans. If that question had been posed, have you served in any of His Majesty's Armed Forces, the response would have been even greater. The Covenant not only covers serving personnel and reservists, it also covers veterans and all of their families. If we begin to put that together, the Armed Forces Covenant here in Plymouth probably covers 20% or more of the population, let alone those who seek to serve them in support through Babcocks and others who make sure that they are able to serve and to serve well. There is no doubt that in Plymouth, the Armed Forces Covenant is more than signatures on a piece of paper. I'd like to pay tribute in saying that to the work that Councillor Murphy has done tirelessly, not just because she has a title as a champion, but because she has conviction and passion and takes action to support all of our armed forces community, from the children of serving personnel to the very oldest of the veterans. She stands up for them day in, day out. And let me assure you, she bends my ear very, very frequently. In fact, I almost fear her coming in and saying, "Oh, Chris, I've got an idea." But her ideas are amazing. Look at how we support Remembrance Sunday here in the city, in the run-up. The latest statue currently in Civic Square are because of her work with our armed forces communities and covenant partners. We recognise our armed forces as a city, not only through our actions, but through the awarding of freedoms. And if we were to be able to walk around the Guildhall at the moment and the panelling wasn't all protected, we could read the names of many, many freedoms awarded to different parts of our armed forces community, both serving and those who support them. We've welcomed throughout the support of the Legion in the work they do. We really recognise the work that they have done in getting the Covenant from a concept through a voluntary contribution to something enshrined in law and now being pushed further. And we totally back their campaign for the reasons said. But I think government has a real role, because while local authorities around the country are doing their bit, there is no national push to recognise the Armed Forces Covenant and what it means. Sadly, 67% of civilians in the UK have little or no knowledge of the Armed Forces Covenant. Even worse, 25% of the current Armed Forces community have low awareness, and 25% are unaware. I think there's a real job for government to do to shout about why this matters. I wholly support this motion, and I really thank Paulina and Kevin for bringing it to our attention, and hope the leader will write a very strong letter to the Minister detailing our current support and ongoing support for the Legion and the Covenant. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Right. If nobody else wishes to speak, then I'll ask Councillor Murphy to sum up, please.
I think everything's been said that needs to be said, Lord. Maybe just go to the vote.
Go to the vote by using your keypads. Thank you. The motion has passed. I would now propose that we have an adjournment for tea. Come back, say 4:15? Half an hour? Well, it's 4:15 nearly, isn't it? Near enough. Yeah. 4:15, back in the chamber. 10:04 back in the chamber. I move to item 9C, Drake Ward by-election. Councillor Steele, would you like to introduce the motion?
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I bring this motion for a very simple reason. Trust in local democracy matters. When something happens that risks undermining this trust, this council has a responsibility to act. In May 2023, residents of Drake Ward elected Councillor Steve Ricketts as an independent councillor. Councillor Ricketts himself said, Drake Ward is so unique and special, it deserves a local independent voice. But on the 25th of February this year, he announced that he had joined the Reform Party and now sits as a Reform councillor. For many residents, this is not a small or procedural shift. It is a material change to the basis on which they casted their votes. People chose an independent voice. They did not choose a Reform representative. And when a councillor changes political affiliation, especially so far from their next scheduled election, it raises a simple but important democratic question. Do the people of Drake Ward still consent to being represented in this way? Councillor Ricketts certainly didn't think so the last time this issue arose in 2019, when a Labour councillor went independent. He said, and I quote, Drake Ward needs a by-election. He also said, you may have some authority, but you have no legitimacy in this community until you resign, triggering a by-election. And a week later, he shared a petition calling for one. So I'm merely following Councillor Ricketts' own example with this motion. My question for him is simple, my Lord Mayor. Does he still stand by his words? Our duty as councillors is to protect the integrity of the electoral mandate, not for ourselves, not for any party, but for the people we serve. This motion does not tell the residents of Drake Ward what to think. It simply asks that they be given their right to have a say. We know that council elections are already scheduled for the 7th of May, because we never cancelled them, including an election in Drake Ward. So aligning any by-election with that date means residents can have their voice heard at minimal additional cost. So the question before us is straightforward. When an elected representative changes their political affiliation mid-term, should residents have a right to confirm or withdraw the confidence they originally placed in them? I believe they should. Let me be clear, this motion is not about political point scoring, it's about democratic principle. The seat belongs to the residents, not the councillor. Whether someone moves to Labour, the Conservatives, the Greens, the Lib Dems, Reform, or anywhere else, the principle is the same. That is why Plymouth Labour called for by-elections for the 3 councillors who left our group. When the nature of that representation changes significantly, residents deserve the opportunity to decide whether that change reflects their wishes. My ask today is simple, that this council invites Councillor Ricketts to resign so a by-election can take place on the 7th of May alongside other council elections. That way, residents in Drake Ward can determine who should represent them for the remainder of the term. We should have confidence in our voters. We should trust them to make their own decision, and we should uphold the principle that those who serve in this chamber do so with the continuing consent of those who elected them. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Councillor Taylor, I understand you would second the motion. Do you wish to speak now or reserve your right?
I will second the motion, Lord Mayor, and reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Does anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Holloway.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So let's start with this. Today's motion is simple. Voters in Drake elected an independent councillor. They did not elect a Reform councillor. If their politics change that dramatically, the people who cast those votes deserve the chance to decide again. As one resident in Drake Ward said to me recently, just because something is allowed does not mean it is right. Because the man whose claims in the election in Drake Ward presented something quite different from the principles of his new party. A man who once positioned himself as the loudest advocate for saving trees. You did. You've since revealed yourself to be someone who denies the climate emergency altogether. That is not a small shift in emphasis. That is a new set of values. Michael Foot, whose memorial stands atop Freedom Fields Park on the edge of Drake Wards, once said, "Politicians live in little worlds of their own and imagine these are the universe." And he was right, because if you want to understand politics, you shouldn't start in rooms like this. You should start in places like Greenbank and Mutley. At the very top of the ward sits St Matthias, the highest point in Plymouth, at least until Beckley Point came along. Stand there and you can see much of the city stretched out and beyond it the sea. Here we have the spirit of discovery and disco meeting in one corner of the city. There's the reservoir and its fountains, which, like much in life, can be temperamental and beautiful when they're working. There's Mount Street Primary School, now one of the most diverse schools in the city, where children from every background grow up side by side. There's Plymouth High School for Girls, producing generations of formidable young women, including MP Rebecca Smith, proof that this ward has never been short of women willing to stand up and lead. The University of Plymouth sits at the heart of the ward, bringing young people here from across the country and across the world. It's also where some marches in our city begin, including pro-trans marches, young people standing up for dignity, equality, and the right to live freely as themselves. That is Drake Ward, a place where people from every background live, work, and study side by side, where difference isn't feared, it's simply part of everyday life. You see that spirit at the Junction pub, hosting bands with names like High on Maiden, Taylor More Swiftly, Blanc 182, Nirvana, and Crywank. Proof that creativity, humour, and a slightly chaotic music scene are alive and well in Drake Ward. You see it in the rebel botanists, teaching people about protecting our natural world in Hounderscombe Park. You see it in Greenbank Community Centre, the beating heart of our neighbourhood for so many residents. You see it in the volunteers at the Ford Park Cemetery who run history wards. You see it in the extraordinary work of Trevi and the Sunflower Centre, supporting women through some of the hardest moments imaginable. And you see it at the Box, where art, culture, and history come together, where volunteers help people from all ages explore Plymouth's story, welcoming in children from every part of the city to understand who we are as a city. Drake is loud, Drake is compassionate, Drake is sometimes chaotic, but above all, it is a community that looks out for one another. Michael Foot also said something else that feels just as true here. Hope is the antidote to despair and the fuel that drives positive change. And when I look at Drake Ward, that's exactly what I see. People building hope. Serving the people of Drake Ward has been a joy. And whoever represents Drake Ward now and in the future must remember two very simple things. Firstly, you are not just representing a council seat that you use as a platform for your own ideology. You are representing Greenbank, Mutley, and North Hill. You are representing a community that builds hope every single day. And I have confidence it will continue to do so long after any of us leave this chamber. Secondly, you are holding the trust of thousands of people who lent you that trust. You are holding the promises you made when you asked for that trust. When those promises change, the people who placed that trust in you deserve the chance to decide again. Thank you.
Councillor Loveridge.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. Let's call this motion out for what it really is. I have to say the sheer hypocrisy behind this motion is staggering. Why is it there are 3 Labour councillors that changed their political position in the chamber? There were no emergency motions called then, not a word. The moment Councillor Steve Rickett chose to join Reform, suddenly Labour discovers a brand new position for democratic principles. What Labour are proposing today sets a dangerous precedent that if you change your political position in a way that majority don't like it, this council will try to force you out. That is not democratic, that is punishment. Yeah, and bullying. And it will not support a motion that reeks a double standard and a political gamemanship. Let's be real, is this really about Steve Ricketts, or is this about Steve Ricketts joining Reform? Because to me, that's what this is about, and it is a form of bullying. It is. If this council wants to talk about principles, then let's start by applying them equally to everyone and not just when it suits Labour. I have to say, I find this motion brought forward today by Councillor Daniel Steele completely ridiculous. Thank you, my Lord. Yeah, my Lord.
Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you. I do understand the point that Councillor Loveridge is making, that is this about Councillor Ricketts or is it about a change of party? But when some of our councillors left recently, there was a call in the press to ask them to stand again. You know, we did do that. We didn't bring motions, but we did do that. No, you're right, but it was opposed. I'm just saying that. I wanted to speak though about reform a little bit because to me that's what this is about. Councillor described Drake as being loud, compassionate, chaotic, but people look out for one another. That is such a description of Britain and British values and what British people are like. Loud and chaotic and compassionate, but eventually we all end up pulling together. And Reform are doing something at the moment, Lord Mayor, which is pretending to be very, very British. But I don't think they are. And I think a shift from one British party to another, kind of, it's not great, but these things happen. But Reform are fundamentally different. The Employment Rights Bill has just been made into law. It's become the Employment Rights Act. There's things in there which the vast majority of the country support. There's been a ban on those horrible 0 hours contracts. Vast majority of the country, the British people, support that. Sick pay from day one. Vast majority of British people support that.
Councillor Gilmore, can you please stick to the point?
The point is why this is fundamentally different. I can see that you think I'm straying, but if you just indulge me for a moment. Reform opposed this. They opposed this fundamentally British move towards fairness. With women's rights, Reform oppose it. They oppose a fundamental women's rights. They are against women having autonomy over their own bodies. They're on record as saying that. This is different. This is a different kind of politics. And it's being led by the American right, the American Christian right, who are now advising Reform and advising them to oppose the freedoms that we have. In my view, it's a fundamentally un-British party. And that is why I think that this is a really different thing to a normal councillor changing group. Thank you.
Councillor Ricketts.
Good afternoon, my Lord Mayor. Labour haven't taken this news very well, Lord Mayor. Not well at all. But this is, unfortunately, the environment we're in this chamber where some of these Labour councillors really get off on this sort of thing, like giving other councillors, you know, it's a toxic environment, Lord Mayor. You know, they're in the pub after the last budget meeting, celebratory drinks, and I'm sure they'll do the same. Yeah, you gave Ricketts a good, you know, congratulating themselves. It's embarrassing, Lord Mayor. I've had lots of correspondence since I joined Reform, some emails that come to mind. How's the response to this been? I can't imagine it will have gone down too well. It's totally out of proportion to the advantage of holding a permit. That's the emails I'm receiving from my residents about the damage you're causing to our community with the rise in parking charges and council tax. 25% increase. Yeah, there's a reason I'm leaving Plymouth, mate, and I'm afraid these people are a disgrace. That's you they're referring to. Absolutely appalling. What percentage increase is that? I'm incensed.
I have a point
so
of order,
much so
Lord Mayor.
that I've been verging on anger and tears all day.
I've looked long and hard, but I can't see anything in this motion about parking charges. So could I please ask you to direct Councillor Ricketts to stick to the subject?
Could you please stick to the subject?
If you let me continue, Lord Mayor, there will be a point to it, as with the previous speaker. The issue is that I've got things to do in my ward. I'll read that last one again. Absolutely appalling. What percentage increase is that? I'm incensed. So much so that I've been verging on anger and tears all day. And you want me to resign? Never. Not when local people need me to represent them and fight for them. That's it. Councillor Steele was feeling determined this week. He was really determined to get this through today. He wasn't determined. He should have been determined a few weeks ago when there was budget setting. And he voted for a budget that was going to maximise council tax to the max and put his own residents' lives...
Councillor Ricketts, will you please stick to the subject?
It's about this... I am the subject, Lord Mayor. He's really determined with the odds. What are the odds? What are you fighting against, Daniel? Oh, well, there's 56 versus 1, so we can speak for 4 hours and he can speak for 5 minutes. I'm really determined, Lord Mayor. 20 years of service, Lord Mayor, I've given my community that I live in. And we have Labour walking around year after year, pretending they live in Drake. They don't even live in Drake. We've had miserable Labour councillors. Now, you may believe that reform isn't the most well, I haven't said a word against...
Point of order.
Is this the way it's going to be, Lord Mayor?
Lord Mayor, there was some personal abuse there, which I think should be retracted.
Would you please keep respectful to the council, Councillor Ricketts?
If you thank you. I'm sure I'll get the extra time for the interruptions. 56 versus 1. Unbelievable scenes. These elections that I've been fighting in Drake Ward for my people has always been, if you go through the results since Drake Ward was created, if you go through the results, it's always been Steve Ricketts versus the Labour Party. Nothing's changed. Okay? I've been fighting against you for many, many years. I've finally got to the point after long consideration that my country's on the line, Lord Mayor. And I need to attach myself to Reform UK because we are in dire straits. And sometimes I will stand up for my community, but I need to stand up for my country. And I'm proud to do that. This hasn't been something I've done quickly. I've been thinking about this long and hard. All the comments I've received from local people have been taken very seriously. Okay, those that have opposed my decision, but I appreciate the vast support that I've continued to receive for the last 20 years that realise, like me, there's local issues, but there's also our country that's on the line. It's the usual Labour tactics. Let's get out, let's get on our phones, let's start typing away with their social media posts. Let's hurt him, let's bring him down, we can't be having this. Let's do a leaflet. Let's meet up on the corner of the community and walk around. It's basically legalised bullying, Lord Mayor. And something that's never happened before since Plymouth City Council has been created is a motion on notice for such a situation. It's happened for many, many years, but there seems to be some special treatment. Is it because Reform UK are the favourites to win this local elections? They are the favourites to take the country. Is that what it's about? Yes, it is, Lord Mayor. So you're going to use this as an opportunity, potentially, to distract the population from the misery you've caused them in Plymouth. And it's time for change. Council tax up 5%. Permit rises, eye-watering. Central Park massacre. Blocking up of Mutley Plain on the safest junction in town. £1 billion of debt.
Councillor Ricketts, can you please finish your sentence? Your time is up.
I think there was some interventions there, Lord Mayor.
I think we've actually taken those into account as well.
I look forward to being joined by many Reform councillors in the next few weeks, where the public will see what we can really do.
Sit down?
Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Would you please sit down? Councillor Goslin.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. This is a really simple motion, a motion that everyone can understand. It takes account of three simple principles: honour, truth, and courage. If Councillor Ricketts had a sense of honour, he would have acknowledged that he was voted in as one type of candidate, an independent candidate, and is now masquerading as another, has joined another party. Now, I freely admit this is not unique to Councillor Ricketts. There are a number of councillors over this sector of the council that have done similar things, and they also lack honour. Associated with that is a failure of truth.
Excuse me, Lord Mayor. I think that's got to be corrected there, because I was truly elected as an independent councillor.
I was too. I was too.
And that's what Plymouth now
Councillor
people
Beer,
voted
could you
me.
please sit down? We've got a point of order.
Well, that is my point of order, Lord Mayor, and you need to
What
take a
is
bit
the
more
point of
control of
order?
the meeting.
Well, it's not a point of order. Right. Councillor Goslin.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. The point of principle of honour also associated with truth, that you should stand for your community as you've been elected. If you stand under a particular flag or a particular party or a particular aspect, then you should be concentrated on that aspect. Because if you're associated with a particular party or associated as an independent, then the people that voted you in as an independent expect you to act as an independent, not as a member of a group, as a member of a party. So that's a failure of truth. The third point is a failure of courage, because anyone can stand down as a councillor and seek re-election under their new position, under their new party, or as an independent. Anyone can do that. And if you are confident, if you have the courage and the honour of your convictions, then you would do that. And you would put yourself back in front of the people that elected you and said, I have changed my mind. I now wish to stand as a representative of this party, or I wish to stand now as an independent, no longer associated with that party, and I put myself before you again and put my trust in you. It's the failure, abject failure of courage to do so, because that is the opportunity that is in front of you, Councillor Ricketts now, and has been in front of other councillors that have changed their flags of convenience over the years. It is simple failure of courage. They have put their own personal power in front of the basic principles of democracy. You stand under the banners with which you were elected. If you change those banners, the only honourable, truthful, and courageous thing to do is to seek re-election under those new banners. That is why this motion on notice is absolutely crystal clear. Now, Councillor Ricketts might want to paint it in a slightly different light, but it is a simple principle. The simple principles that the public hold dear in their politicians. Truth, honour, and courage. And if you do not resign and seek re-election, then you have failed your electorate, you have failed your ward, and you have failed to uphold those basic principles of public life. So that is why I believe that everyone in this chamber should vote to support this motion, because it is you are supporting those basic principles of public life and democracy. And there are no excuses for not upholding those principles. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think the conduct of this debate sums up the problem with our democracy, and the problem that the majority of the councillors in this chamber representing the Labour and Conservative parties, I know Conservative members haven't spoken, but the general principle of the two-party system isn't working. And ultimately, there's going to be one huge upset, I think, at the local election on May the 7th, when a number of people sitting opposite who are seeking re-election will no longer be sitting on those benches. Because the fundamental principles that Councillor Gosling espoused then, you don't uphold in the chamber. You don't respect the opinions of the minority. You only respect the opinions of yourselves. And it's disgraceful. Why shouldn't Councillor Ricketts be able to defend himself without being heckled by Councillor Stevens constantly or other members? And that's fundamentally where you're going wrong. You do not allow those who don't favour your opinion to have free speech, and you'll pay the price for it. Now, I don't totally disassociate myself from the sentiments of certain comments from Labour members. You know, I left the Conservative Party in the January and sought re-election myself in the May. And that was because the Conservative Party didn't allow me to stand. So I had a choice: did I continue in local government, or did I seek to stand as an independent? And generally, people should stick to the colours for which they're elected for. And if you take other independent members, the ones present today have all sought and been elected by independent members. Even though members opposite, it doesn't matter. And this is the point, through you, Lord Mayor, to Councillor Stevens. If you want to speak, Councillor, get up and speak, but don't just interrupt people the whole time. You don't allow it at planning committee, so we shouldn't be allowing it in the council chamber, should we? You know, you shut people up at the planning committee in a way that's totally inappropriate. It is inappropriate. And Lord Mayor, if you interrupt me now, again, I'm making a point.
I'm not going to interrupt you, Councillor Nicholson, but I'm just going to say to everybody, would you please just cool it? Please listen to what everybody's got to say. They've all got a point of view. They're entitled to be heard. And then you can have your say if you haven't already had it.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So the point is, you know, motions can be put on notice, and effectively Councillor Ricketts was trying to defend it. But I do make a distinction that there are members in this chamber who have spoken and who have been here for some period in recent months who have voted for absentee councillors. They voted for people to remain in office, yet not actually doing the job. And we can see countless times at this full council meeting that members don't turn up. And we've had recent by-elections caused by the Labour Party, knowing that councillors, those particular individuals, couldn't continue in office. They've cost the council taxpayers thousands of pounds.
Would Councillor going to show his support for freedom of speech by taking an intervention?
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Does Councillor Nicholson agree with me that there is a world of difference between looking at an individual councillor's work rate, which was the subject of the previous motion, and a councillor changing sides? And would he also agree with me that some of the independent members sat behind him were not elected as independent councillors? Will he at least agree on that?
So, on the latter point, yes, there's one, but there have been four members of this council who have been elected as independents, and yet they're still treated like dirt compared to other members of the council. The point is, Councillor Stevens, if we talk about principle, you can't have some principles that suit your overall aspiration and then discount other principles. It's not right that you've got 57 members of the council and then you're carrying one or two who don't turn up, who take £12,500. We had recent by-elections caused by Labour members and the Labour Party that could have been managed and saved the council taxpayer money by not causing by-election. The fact is, Lord Mayor, that democracy doesn't prevail properly in this city. It doesn't prevail properly in this council. Councillor Ricketts will face the electorate at some point, and the electorate will make their decision about the future of Councillor Ricketts. I wouldn't have done what Councillor Ricketts has done. That's his choice. Ultimately, we're only responsible to the electorate, all of us. And I think we should remember that, and we should remember equally that we all have the ability to speak up for our residents. Councillor Ricketts, if nothing else, has been a fervent defender and advocate for the Drake ward. And Labour members might not recognise it, but he puts those residents first, and he should be commended for that. And whether or not they support him as a reform councillor, time will tell. But he is a defender of his ward, as much as any other member of this council, and he should be commended, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Bannerman.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Councillor Ricketts, I understand your point that you feel that it's 56 to 1. However, if I went to the shop and I bought a loaf of bread, halfway through consuming it, it turned into a bag of fish. I feel like I should be able to go back and say, hang on a minute, this isn't what I paid for. I think that that is what your voters are saying. They're saying, give me a chance to buy
Councillor
what was on offer.
You're supposed to address myself.
Oh,
not
sorry, Lord Mayor. It's, I feel that the residents of Drake Ward should have the opportunity to purchase what is on offer and not have something that has turned into a chameleon even. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Dan.
I think I'm just going to come back to democracy, because it does make a huge difference who sits in this chamber. Now, having been one of those councillors who have been around for a bit of a while, we've had Conservatives in control, we've had Labour in control. Councillors have lost their seats at elections and been absolutely emotionally destroyed and distressed because the electorate hasn't voted for them. There have been councillors sitting in here who may not have expected to have won their seats, have been absolutely euphoric. And then there are people like me who put their name forward every 4 years. We go through the whole thing of asking 7,000 households in our wards if I can have a job for the next 4 years, please. Can I represent you? Can I be an advocate for you? It is really, really important. The decisions we make in this council are reflective of the political spectrum that the residents vote for. So if you just think of the last council meeting, if I'm right, when we had the budget, we had the Labour group who put forward the budget. Then we had the Conservatives who had a leader who spoke on the budget. We had the Independents who at that point were a group and had a leader and spoke on the budget. We had the
Point of order, Lord Mayor, point of order. This has nothing to do with Steve Ricketts' motion. It's about a previous council meeting.
No, I'm making a point about democracy and who is voting in here. We had the Green Party who didn't speak, but because they were a party, they could have had a vote. They could have had a comment on the budget. And then we had some independents. But everybody in this chamber had a right to speak. No one was shut up. No one was closed down. Everybody had a right to speak. Now, I have been out talking to some of the residents in this particular ward, and some of them are really distressed because this is not about a person. It's about a candidate who got elected to be a councillor, having a strong, independent voice and standing up for those residents. Those people did not vote for a political party. The selling point was an independent voice. It wasn't a Reform voice or a Labour voice or a Green voice or a Tory voice. It was an independent voice, which is fundamentally different. And we have called for motions on notice here before, when councillors have moved away, when they've changed jobs, when they've changed parties. This is nothing new, but it is democracy. All we're saying in this chamber is that we think it is honourable if actually the makeup of this chamber reflects the makeup of the political values of our city. And they will change at elections. They always do. There is no guarantee who is going to be sitting here come June and the AGM. We have no idea. But I can tell you one thing. Our residents have the right to make sure that the people who sit in this chamber represent them and their values and their politics. And that's all I have to say.
Councillor Lang. Did you want to speak? You raised your hand. Oh, sorry. Councillor Ney.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd just like to say this motion on notice is setting a dangerous precedent, because when people are elected, they're sometimes elected on certain promises like saving Pounds House, not increasing the council tax. Do we bring them people back and say, well, you haven't saved Pound House, you resign and you're out? That's a really big issue for the people in the city. He's broken no rules, Councillor Rickett. The local government association has no rules on this. He is voted as a person in his ward. People like him or they don't like him. Now, we could go back to our MP's leaflets, from 2024 GE. There's a bragging message on there that a member of Parliament has diverted to Labour. Should we ask them to leave now? Do we say, oh, you can't be with Labour anymore? No, we don't. This is because Plymouth Labour are terrified of reform. They know what's coming. They're changing the council. And in May, we're going to see a lot of different faces in here. And unfortunately, Plymouth Labour don't like that. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Finn, did you want to speak? No. Councillor Taylor, do you wish to speak?
Absolutely. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Sorry. It's not on my list, sorry. It's on the list. Sorry, Councillor Stevens, you wanted to speak. I'm afraid you're not on my list, so...
No problem, Lord Mayor. It's so that our children can get to sleep at night that we tell them we live in a democracy, and the right to choose who governs and doesn't govern us is a right that's still not extended to millions of people across the world. And thanks to Councillor Rickett's, democracy in Plymouth has taken a few steps backwards in the last few weeks. Now, it's not up to one councillor on their own to decide an election result should be overturned whenever they feel like it. The arrogance it takes to say, you voted me in with these promises and these principles, but now I'm going to throw them out of the window, is absolutely breathtaking. Now, I have no objection to people changing their minds. That happens all the time. That's the nature of elected politics. But to switch and cheat the voters, which is what's happened, is an absolute disgrace. I really do feel for Councillor Patrick Nicholson. He tried so hard to defend Councillor Ricketts when everybody could tell that he thinks what's happened is a disgrace. We know he agrees with us, but he just can't find it in himself to say so, and we all understand why. He was saying that Councillor Ricketts puts the residents of Drake first. Well, actually, what Councillor Ricketts has done is put the residents of Drake last. That's what's happened. Who decides which party represents a ward? Is it the 7,000 or 8,000 people of Mutley, Greenbank and North Hill? Did they decide? Or is it one person on his own deciding how he feels at any one time during the day? That's not how we run a democracy, Lord Mayor. We're told that this would set a dangerous precedent. Well, good. Good if it sets a precedent. If every time elected politicians decide to use voters like pieces on a chessboard for their own enjoyment, I'm glad we're setting a precedent today. When the Chief Executive announces results in the Life Centre on election night, I'm naive enough to think that people will stand by the principles they've been elected on. Now, maybe that's my fault for being too naive. But when somebody gets elected as a Labour councillor or a Conservative or a Green or a Liberal Democrat councillor, or elected as a Liberal Democrat councillor, how stupid of me, I expect them to stand by that. I don't remember anything on Councillor Ricketts' literature saying vote for me as an environmental, green-minded local advocate for Greenbank and Mutley. But by the way, I'm going to switch to reform in 3 years' time. Maybe I missed that. I don't know. I don't think I did. Now, Lord Mayor, this has absolutely nothing at all to do with individual parties' policies. This is, do politicians stick to the principles they were elected on, that they went to the voters on? Or is what some people tell the voters just to be ignored? Because we know they're going to have a different point of view in a couple of years' time, so we're not even going to bother with that. Should election results be overturned by one individual who happens to have had a bad day? Councillor Rickett says yes. We say no. And it's on that basis that I'm fully behind the motion before us today.
Councillor Macleay, I'll call you and then I'll call, I'll get the motion summed up.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So there is a very clear world in which I would be supportive of this motion, and that is if it came genuinely from the communities and the people that are in Drake. It hasn't. In fact, the petition calling for a by-election is a Labour petition website whose real sole purpose is just to capture voter intention data ahead of May. I would really like to have seen communities in Drake coming together to call and say that this isn't who they want to see representing their communities and that they don't feel represented by reform, but that isn't what is being put forward today. Now, I am here because of a by-election. I know how important it is to give communities a chance to have their say when something has gone wrong. But what went wrong in my case is that the councillor was totally absent, moved to Gloucester for 18 months and failed to carry out the responsibilities of this job. And now I am no friend of reform. And in fact, I think that they are led by, honestly, like wee chancellors who pretend to represent the working class but do anything but. Saying that, Councillor Ricketts, whether I do not agree with him, on the vast majority, he is here and he is showing up. This isn't my decision to make. This really isn't this chamber's decision to make. This is the community of Drake's decision to make and Councillor Ricketts' decision to make. If Labour are so worried about councillors leaving their party, as has been said several times today, perhaps they need to look at the principles that their party has abandoned, whether that be Labour's scapegoating of migrants, disabled people, or of trans people. Thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I am very happy to second this motion because at its heart, this is about a very simple democratic principle that people should be represented by the mandate that was voted for. When a councillor makes such a fundamental change to the basis on which they were elected, is it entirely reasonable for us to go back to the voters and seek a fresh mandate? The discourse about this motion leading up to today has been very interesting to watch, and some of the arguments that I expected to come up today have come up today. We've heard the argument today that this is perfectly legal, you're allowed to do that. That is correct, it is. But as Councillor Holloway said, just because something is legal does not make it right. There are many things in public life that are technically legal, but morally wrong. Aggressive tax avoidance, price gouging during a cost of living crisis, the VIP lane for PPE contracts during COVID, all legal, but deeply, deeply wrong. And trust in politics in this country is at its lowest. We have heard people say politicians don't do what we are going to do, and that isn't an allegation that's levied just against people on this side of the chamber, it's also levied against people on the other. And so the question shouldn't be whether or not this is allowed. The question should be, is this fair to those residents in Drake who cast their votes in good faith at that election? We have also heard, in the lead up to today that this motion somehow undermines democracy, which is an extraordinary claim, because this motion does the exact opposite. It says that voters should decide. If those who are shouting loudest in the political discourse across the city at the moment are so sure that people want reform, then surely they would welcome it at the first available opportunity at the ballot box. The first available opportunity. As Councillor Steele said, there are council elections already scheduled for the 7th of May, so the cost of holding a by-election on the same day is small. The cost of undermining democracy is far, far greater. If you believe the public to be on your side, why would you not want that test? I won't take lectures, Lord Mayor, from people in this chamber who use the resources, time, money and manpower of the Labour Party to get elected, and then have sat on the other side of the chamber amongst people who sow division and push hatred in this city. I'm happy to take arguments from others, but I'm certainly not going to take any lectures from people like that. And Councillor Loveridge talks of hypocrisy. My democratic principles, they're not new, they're pretty consistent actually. I have long held these views loudly and proudly as a democratic socialist, not only when it's popular, not only when it's convenient, but every day I show up with my values. And unlike some members in this chamber, I stood on a platform that I stand by today. You might not like me, but I've been returned to this chamber 3 times, not by small margins. My values haven't changed. I haven't taken my voters for granted. The hypocrisy is not on this side. And Councillor Ricketts talks about the toxic environment that we're in. He may be interested to know that those speaking in support of him in his name have harassed, intimidated and threatened councillors on this side of the chamber, particularly women, for the protection of women and girls. The environment is toxic not because of those who still believe in democracy. And let's also be clear about something else. The brand of democracy perpetuated by the far right is not the only form of democracy that exists. Across the country, we have seen communities repeatedly reject this type of politics at the ballot box. They didn't vote. People in Drake did not vote for a party whose councillors have described children with SEND as evil. They did not vote for a party that treats equality protections as something to be dismantled rather than defended. And they did not vote for a party that repeatedly uses division and culture war politics, stoking hatred against LGBT people, disabled people, or people of colour, instead of focusing on the real issues that affect people in this city. You can shake your head all you like, Councillor Ricketts, it's true and you're going to hear it. The people of Drake Ward did not vote reform at all. Councillor Macleay is right, this decision is for the people of Drake. So this motion says, let voters have their say. If the residents of Drake support this change, they can endorse it at the ballot box, and if they do not, they will have the opportunity to vote for something else. That's not controversial, that is democracy working as it should. It does not dictate the outcome of an election, it says the people of Drake Ward should. Everyone in this chamber would do well to remember the perils of ignoring democracy. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Steele, would you like to sum up, please?
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. It needs repeating, just because something is allowed doesn't make it right. We've heard a lot about values, and values matter because they shape how we treat people in the city. And the values that Councillor Ricketts has expressed are well known. Most recently, he said we should put children in care into disused council offices rather than family homes, that we shouldn't pay hard-working council officers the living wage, and that tackling the climate crisis is just net zero madness. These aren't small differences of opinion, and they're not just his values. By welcoming him into his party, into their party, Reform is saying that it's their values too. On climate change, Councillor Ricketts has dismissed net zero as madness, yet the Climate Change Committee's recent report on the 11th of March has been absolutely clear. The cost of cutting UK emissions to net zero is less than the cost of a single fossil fuel price shock. Let that sink in. We're seeing it right now. Oil and gas prices have spiked because of the conflict in the Middle East and Iran, creating chaos on the global energy markets. So while Reform shouts slogans, every family and every business in Plymouth pays the price for that volatility. I don't believe Plymothians want any of this. I believe Plymothians want children in our care to be treated with love, compassion and stability in foster families or in family-style residential homes. I believe Plymothians want people to earn an honest wage for an honest day's work. And I believe Plymothians want us to take the climate crisis seriously, not just to protect our future and our children's future, to protect our energy security so that conflicts in the Middle East or elsewhere never dictate the price of our energy bills. Some people responding to this motion have said that Plymouth Labour is running scared. Frankly, that bewilders me. I want to quote what Councillor Ricketts said in 2019. Drake Ward needs a by-election. What about asking for an election? Putting this question to the voters says we're scared. It's the complete opposite. Plymouth Labour is ready to fight an election any day, anywhere. We will always stand up for the politics of hope, not division, for integrity, not convenience, for accountability, not excuses. So our message to Councillor Ricketts is simple. If you're confident in your new position, put your money where your mouth is. Resign and let the people of Drake Ward have their choice and decide. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Steele. We'll move to the vote now, please, using the buttons on your keypads. The motion is carried. Now we move to item 9D, the City of Culture. Sorry? The motion on notice regarding the City of Culture submitted by Councillor Wood and Councillor Lugger has been withdrawn on this occasion. Notice has been given in accordance with the Council's procedural notes that they wish to move this motion at a later meeting. So we move on to item 9E, the safety of fishers. Councillor Evans, would you like to introduce the motion?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Almost 10 years ago, when we were in opposition, I brought a motion on notice, seconded by the then Councillor Chris Mavin. We brought it to the Council after the tragic loss of brave fishermen who worked out of our port. We'd lost 3. A decade ago, around our coast, lives were being lost because fishermen who had found themselves in the water without the chance to get off a mayday call before an incident were perishing because nobody knew they were in trouble or where they were. At the time, I described the fact that we knew where the Voyager spacecraft was in the solar system, but if somebody went overboard in the sea here, we didn't know where they were. Our fantastic RNLI volunteers around the coast stand ready to reach all of our fleet's fishing grounds within an hour from launch, but they can only be tasked and rescued when they know someone is in trouble. Now, the Plymouth Pioneering Project saw personal locator beacons, fitted into the life jackets, personal flotation devices, these are called, right? They were issued to all our fishermen. The personal locator beacons were a game changer. Why? Because they save lives. And not only that, here in Plymouth, but they were replicated and rolled out around the coast. In fact, a bit further away than that. Now, across the UK, fishermen have that kit, and it means that if they end up in the water, the activated beacons send a distress signal via satellite to our Marine and Coast Guard Agency, and provide a location that means lifeboat and nearby vessels can go directly to the scene. It really took search out of search and rescue. And I want to put on record this council's sincere thanks to Clive Palfrey, a former fisherman himself, a fishing safety expert, and RNLI Cox, who brought this simple solution to a complicated problem that has made so much of a difference to so many. Fishing still remains the UK's most dangerous peacetime occupation. We should not rest on our laurels, because 10 years has helped to keep our fishermen safe. It's helped them to come home to their families after every trip. It's time for Plymouth to step up once again and help support a new era of improving safety, pioneering work to not only provide the latest in PFDs and PLBs, that's personal flotation devices, with new advancements in technology, but to better understand and help support our fleet counter other risks of injury and loss that remain all too common at sea. There are common denominators, Lord Mayor, in almost all accidents that lead to loss of life, injury at sea, and loss of commercial vessels. And that is that the crew will have attended courses and have been issued certificates of competency as required by regulation, and the vessels have all met inspected safety standards. Now, despite these strict regulatory frameworks and standards, things are still going wrong, and this project will look to work one-to-one with the vessels, the skippers, crews and owners that want to support and better understand the risks and the development of better best practice regimes to share widely. So fishermen, not just in Plymouth, but around the coast, can benefit. And if and when needed, we'll lobby the governments for support and change. Now, this motion looks to design and develop these projects with experts and the local commercial and charter fishermen and seek funding to deliver them. Not council funding, because we think we can get all the money from other people. That's what this motion's about. And I hope you will support our fishing fleet today and vote unanimously for this motion. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor McCartney, I understand you want to second the motion. Do you want to speak now, or do you want to reserve your right?
Yes, please. I'd like to speak now, Lord Mayor. My Lord Mayor, in the first 6 months of 2016, when the last motion was brought, the fishing industry had already tragically lost 9 brave souls. It was the worst year for loss of life in over a decade. The 2016 Marine and Accident Investigation Branch analysis of almost 25 years of data showed that 88% of commercial fishermen who drowned during that period were not wearing a life jacket, a personal flotation device, when they fell into the water. The latest MAIB report issued for 2024 shows 2 losses. While still too many, there can be no doubt of the hard work by many to change behaviours. Getting fishermen wearing life jackets with personal locator beacons is paying off. And I'm proud that started here in Plymouth. But 10 years on, while the basics of how personal locator beacons work remains largely the same, there have been some significant advances in technology that mean, for example, new beacons can now provide updates to those in distress waiting for help, giving them confirmation that their location information has been received and help is on its way. Personal flotation devices have also seen new designs and materials used that can provide lighter life jackets, making them easier and more comfortable to work on deck with than those available a decade ago. The motion undertakes for us to do all we can to work with industry to choose the best of what is available now and secure funding to support the project to deliver them. But while the reduction in fatalities is good news, the less positive news is that the 2 tragic losses in 2024 occurred on well-crewed vessels as a result of unsafe systems. The MAIB has stated that future investigation reports will likely develop the theme of moving beyond having a risk assessment to the proactive management of risk. Regulations to wear life jackets at sea took years to come in after our life jacket scheme. We want our fishermen to have the opportunity to once again be pioneers and move from risk assessment to manage risk proactively ahead of potential regulatory actions, and to be a force for appropriate, well-considered change that develops good regulation and safeguards it as and when needed. 3 investigations and 1 preliminary assessment were started into UK fishing vessels, flooding and foundering during 2024. Unfortunately, none resulted in the loss of life, but the losses to flooding last year indicates how vulnerable many fishing vessels are to water ingress. Most of the UK fishing fleet have little, if any, watertight subdivision, so any appreciable inflow of water can quickly overwhelm the onboard pumps on these small vessels. In such circumstances, raising the alarm early and being well practiced in abandonment routines can and does save lives. Many fishing vessels have significant rigging and deck machinery that can, in failure, cause death and life-altering injuries. Using the MAIB's theme of moving from a risk assessment to proactive management of risk by developing safer practices can help stop these preventable accidents from occurring. If passed, this motion will look to develop a programme delivered by experts to work one-to-one with each of our vessels, helping them to develop safer working practices and protocols to do all we can to eradicate these accidents. Additionally, as with our last scheme, we will ensure that it is reported on and shared widely with government and industry, so fishermen around the coast can learn and build from our project. I move, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Lugger.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. It naturally follows that when there's improvements in technology, there should be improvements in safety. The two should go hand in hand. Whilst the Titanic disaster in 1912 lost 1,500 people in totality, all of the 2,340 members of crew and passengers on board that ill-stricken vessel would have died if it wasn't for the Marconi 5-kilowatt wireless set, which sent out one of the world's first SOS signals. Personal location beacons, coupled with personal flotation devices, are probably one of the greatest safety innovations that technology has produced since wireless SOS. And I'm happy to support this motion today, not just in my name, but in the names of those many, many people from Turnchapel who died fishing and as watermen. Thank you, Councillor Evans, for bringing this motion.
Does anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Evans, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I would imagine that's unanimous. I just wanted to say, though, that, well, I hope it's unanimous. We'll see. But let me just provoke people into action here, because I think it's important to remember this. Fishing community in Plymouth, we've been working hard over the last decade, I think, as an administration, Andy, I think your predecessor too, to try and make sure that saving lives at sea was important. So another thing that worries me about reform is that the architects of Brexit, for example, promised the earth to fishers in this community here. They voted for them, and then they delivered dirt. They delivered dirt. They didn't deliver what they promised. And I am worried about that, especially when you think about Farage, having attended only one meeting of the EU Fisheries Committee that he sat on. He went in there with the support of his electorate and actually delivered nothing. So I just want to make sure that people understand that the fishing community in Plymouth have been let down time and again by Farage, whatever guise he's in, whether it was UKIP or whether it was Brexit Party and now Reform. The man's a liar, he's a charlatan, and he promises the earth and delivers zip. So let's have, as best we can, a unanimous support for this motion. It's interesting, your supporters there, Councillor Ricketts, have disappeared. Perhaps they're putting an application in to join your party, I don't know. But we'll have to wait and see on that. But for today, I think their absence here is noticeable as we put this to the vote. I move, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. We'll now move to the vote using your buttons on the keypad. The motion is carried. Now we move to questions by councillors, item 10. Right, okay. Right. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. This is for Councillor Stevens. Councillor Stevens, given that residents in Plymouth already pay multiple layers of taxation simply to own and operate a vehicle, which include VAT on vehicle purchases and maintenance, vehicle excise duty, the DVLA registration fee, fuel duty, VAT on that same fuel, and the insurance premium tax, all of which are paid from post-tax income, how does Plymouth City Council justify introducing and increasing parking charges well above the rate of inflation? Given this further penalises residents for parking in our car parks and on the roads that they have already paid to maintain through their council tax, did the administration tell your backbench colleagues of your proposals before you asked them to vote through your budget last month?
Thank you, Councillor Wood, for your question. Each year, our party, your party, has reviewed the budget. We take a lot of time into it. We look at parking reviews each year. I think I recall from the annals of your party when they were in power that your on-street parking, I think it was, went up about 30-odd% in one go. That was a big hit.
10 months.
In 10 months. We have to run a parking service that protects children and families outside school by enforcing inconsiderate parking from a few residents. As you know, I've worked with you, Councillor Blight, outside Manadon Vale Primary School, and we've seen the need for good enforcement of parking. That includes on-site visits by the parking enforcement team and cameras and so on. We also have to run consistent and fair parking services around the city. Staff cost. People always moan they don't see any parking attendants. So if we didn't raise fees, we wouldn't be able to enforce bad parking. Enforced parking isn't a punishment on considerate, reliable drivers. It's on those people who are selfish and put the lives and convenience of others at risk. So therefore, the parking charges this time that were approved at last week's cabinet meeting, we listened to feedback, for example, from the public and withdrew the escalation charges as presented for multi-car households for permit parking. We actually have walked around with ward members for all parties and masquerading as no party, and we've looked at we've looked at safe parking outside schools, I said, around bus stops, bus shelters, pinch points on the Barbican, where bad parking actually inhibits people's daily life going about their business. So that's why we've increased charges, Councillor Wood. I'd be quite happy to sit down with you, have a coffee and chat about why we do this, but it's in order that we deliver good services and help transport and highways maintenance in the city. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Excuse me.
Oh, sorry, supplementary. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. Council tax, council debt, and the council's parking charges were lower under the Conservative administration than under your administration. Let's be quite clear on that, Councillor Stevens. You do realise what your proposals mean. It means that if someone wants to enjoy Plymouth Hoe, that you're planning on increasing the charge by 35% to £2.50 for just 1 hour. But businesses in the city who want a long stay permit will now face a charge of £617.50. That's up by 30%. And that if someone is disabled and needs a disabled bay outside their home, you want to charge £55.90 just to apply, also up by 30%. In what world do you think increasing taxes, fees and charges well above the rate of inflation will help people with the cost of living crisis or help our businesses in the city?
Well, I hate to be tarnished by the actions your party took, but we did put them above inflation to meet actual cost. We've also allowed choice in the parking proposals. So, for example, somebody who buys a parking ticket in the city centre, if they haven't used up the whole time that they paid for, they're at liberty to move to another car park in the city centre to use the remaining time. That's what I call value for money, because sometimes when people drive into the city, they don't want just to go just to A, they might need to go to A, B and C. We're introducing charges for the blue badge parking on the promenade. I know you were critical of that on the whole promenade because it isn't classed as on-road car parking. We're aware that some people park there and use it as a commuter car park. So we're looking at fairness there. We are raising the costs. Parking, running parking services cost in terms of people, recruitment, the processes involved. I don't make any apology for raising the parking charges as were accepted because we just have to do it as a city. And equally, I want to remind you, you had an opportunity to look at those papers beforehand. I would have been welcomed you come towards us, but there wasn't any Conservative member on the Budget Management Scrutiny Committee. That could have been raised. No, that could have been raised. But equally, I want to flag up here public transport. Public transport is pretty good in the city from most areas. So if you don't wish to park, get on the bus, and I guess you'll have at times value for money. Thank you. And I'll mention there are consultation elements in the parking proposals as well.
Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. A question for Councillor Penberthy. Councillor Penberthy, thank you very much indeed for giving the Council an update on Plymouth Guildhall. That's very welcomed indeed. However, you gave no indication of timescale, and given the fact that there's a history now of projects significantly overrunning under the administration of the Labour Party, when can we realistically expect to see the use of the Guildhall being available to the citizens of Plymouth?
Lord Mayor, I'd like to correct something there. If we were to look at the entire capital programme, almost all projects are running on time and on budget. I know that doesn't suit Councillor Nicholson's narrative, but that's the truth. And I'd like to pay credit to the officers who make sure that that happens, because that's no mean feat given the vast number of projects that they are working on all of the time. As I said in my announcement, the project that was started is no longer required, and it would be folly for us just to keep on building on the basis of building. I said that we would be taking a pause while we spec'd all of that work properly, and that those tenders would be let by the end of the year. Now, I'm not a magician, and I'm not a soothsayer. You might know what might need to be in those tenders. I don't, and I know officers don't yet. We've said that we're going to have a community conversation about the future use of the Guildhall. I'm not a magician, I'm not a soothsayer, I don't know what the people of Plymouth will tell us. I'd like to make sure I listen to them before I say this is the result. Once we know what we need to know, we will then come out and say, here is the business plan, here is the cost, here is the timetable. I know it doesn't suit you to have that as the answer, but that's the honest answer, and I think that that's an appropriate thing for me to make. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Lord Mayor, as a supplementary, clearly from Councillor Penberthy's briefing at the beginning of the meeting, considerable works have been undertaken to the Guildhall, particularly to the main hall. Is there not an opportunity for parts of the building, like the main hall, potentially to have some limited use and be available for the university's graduation and other uses, whilst works are continuing to create the venue that none of us really know what's going to end up as, please?
If you had listened to my previous announcement and this announcement, and if you actually look on the Council's Facebook feed today, you will know that we have discovered major fire risks in the building. The reason we've discovered that is we've removed some of the walls and the ceilings that we found we needed to do for acoustic works to be done. We didn't remove walls and ceilings before that because they were working as walls and ceilings. The voids in the Guildhall run from the foundations to the apex of the roof. That's above the ceiling level. So from one end of the Great Hall, there is a void that goes up and joins. At the other end of the Great Hall, there is the same, and then there is a void right between the two. There is no fire separation between the Drake Room and the lobby in the basement. And there is no fire separation between the Great Hall and the rooms upstairs. On that basis, the building is not safe. You, Councillor Nicholson, might think it would be a good idea to open the building for partial use. You would be doing so against the advice of the Fire Authority and against building control and against those who need to license the building and against our insurers. We cannot open the building until we do all of that. We could not know that that was the state of the building because that was the insert that was totally concealing those works behind. Those voids are massive. They're fire chimneys, and I'm just really, really grateful that in the last 70 years there wasn't a fire in the Guildhall because that could have been catastrophically fatal. I will not support the opening of a building that is not safe for the public to use, and I trust that the public will accept that too.
Councillor Tippett.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I have a question for the Cabinet Member for the Environment, Councillor Bryce-Delve. I'm really pleased to see food waste is finally being rolled out across the city, and I'm wondering when residents in Higher and Lower Compton, Mannermead, Mutley and Hartley Vale can expect to be included in the food waste collections.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Tibbets, for the question. I'm really glad to hear of your personal enthusiasm for food waste, and that presumably communities in Compton Ward are excited about that as well. I would love to give you a scoop today, but what I will say is that over the next week, officers are collating the information about the following phases. We will make sure that all ward councillors get an update. All areas in Plymouth will have food waste by the end of this year, and over the next week, both ward councillors and residents will be able to see on our updated webpage when the next phase will be coming to your area. Thank you.
Do you have a supplementary? Councillor Steele.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. My question is for Councillor Stevens. So many residents in my ward have expressed concerns around the proposal to introduce charging at Jennycliff and Mountbatten car parks, I should say our ward, Lord Mayor. I've been really clear with Councillor Stevens that I'm opposed to those introductions of those charges, and I really appreciated the conversation you had with me, taking time to talk it through with me. But what I'd like to know is, how will residents be able to have their voices heard, and how will you demonstrate that you've listened and integrated their views into however this proposal goes forward? Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Steele, for your question. And linked to, I should have said to Councillor Wood as well, no one likes introducing or putting up charges just for the sake of it. It isn't something you think, oh, what shall I do today, or what shall we do as a council today? Let's go and do that. It's done on a necessity to kind of prevent big hikes, massive hikes every few years, but also to keep up with the running costs of running the council. Because if we didn't put charges up, we run the risk of taking that money that we gain from parking from other services which no one would want. You do mention there are two proposals that went forward. They were proposed that we would have a public consultation on the introduction of parking at the Strand, Mountbatten and Jennycliff car parks, coastal car parks. They're very different to most other car parks because they don't all have marked bays or tarmac surfaces. The proposed costs were extremely competitive with beaches within a mile or so away, or within 3 miles, such as Wembury and Bovisand. As part of that, including the introduction of blue badge charges on the whole promenade. For the coastal car parks, there will be a public consultation, and I would urge everyone, in the spirit of democracy and fairness, to encourage your residents to respond to that survey and then consultation, and then we'll take on board what's been said and move forward from that way. Thank you.
Do you have a supplementary?
I have a supplementary, Lord Lawyer. I really appreciate your commitment to democracy there, Councillor Stevens. It's very British of you. I've been accused of being un-British recently in my approach to how we do things in the council. The only question I've got is, do you know when the consultation is likely to go live so that I can share that with my residents? Thank you.
Without pinning down a date, Lord Mayor, thank you. That's a good question. It'll be going in the next few weeks. Thank you. But I will come back with a date for you once officers have worked out and once I've found out that precise date. Thank you.
Councillor McNamara.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My question is for Councillor Lang. I know the soft launch of the Efford Youth Centre is going well. I also understand the youth service was formally assessed by the National Youth Agency last month. Could you let us know how that went, please?
Thank you for the question. Well, I'm delighted to say that following a rigorous assessment, the team was awarded an excellent rating when they were visited in February. And that's across 3 areas: active participation, governance and leadership, and youth work practice. So I'd like to congratulate the teams for that excellent rating, which is really, really good to hear.
Do you have a supplementary?
I do, thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you and congratulations to the team. I also understand the youth service is rebranding. Could we have a few more details about that, please?
Yeah, it's not been officially launched yet, but the youth service is rebranding to be called Cosmo, the space to be you. The name was chosen through consultation with our young people, and it was definitely their decision. They chose a name which was different from the one that the adults preferred. And I feel quite proud of that, because it really does go to show that we listen to our young people in Plymouth. And I'll make sure that when that name, Cosmo, is officially launched, that councillors know about it and can come along and congratulate the young people who worked really hard to come up with that name. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Ricketts. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm a big fan, as I'm sure we all are, of the box. I heard recently that it's been nominated twice in this year's Muddy Stiletto Awards. Is Councillor Lang in a position to tell us a little bit more about that, please?
I certainly am. That's right. We've been nominated for Best Family Experience, and we won that in 2024. We've also been nominated for Best Arts, Culture and Theatre, which we won last year. So if I can ask everybody to go to the Devon Muddy Stilettos site and vote for the box in those 2 categories. We've got until the Monday the 23rd of March to get as many nominations as possible so that we can get through to the final. I'm hopeful that we will, but I would really appreciate everybody's support to get there, because it really means a lot to our teams, the staff and the volunteers who work so hard to make the box the incredible success story that we all know it is.
Councillor Lugger.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. My question is for Councillor Stevens. There's a stretch of road at the top of Staddiscombe Village that's so badly eroded it's virtually impossible to drive over. Now, I know it's a demarcation point because we have South Hams down the road, which is Devon County Council's responsibility, and part of it, which is Plymouth City Council's responsibility. Is it possible we could enter into some sort of negotiations with Devon County Council with a view of setting up a project to resurface the entire stretch instead of a patchwork approach, please?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Lugger. I'd be quite happy to chat to you about this and look into it to get the fine detail of the location you're on about. I've got a rough idea, just like the road, and then we can take it forward from that to explore what's the plan for that section of road. Thank you. Thanks for your question.
You have a supplementary? Councillor Lugger? Councillor Finn?
Question for Councillor Stevens. In reply to Councillor Woods, it appears that there's no criteria that you've mentioned today that would justify actually charging for Jennycliff car parks. Jennycliff car park and parts of the Mountbatten car parks are not made up. In view of these proposed fees, before you ever consider charging for those car parks, both in Jennycliff and parts of the Mountbatten car park, will you tarmac the said car parks and mark out the bays, particularly to avoid any damage to vehicles using the said parks?
Lord Mayor, thank you, Councillor Finn, for your question. The car parks you mentioned, Jennycliff and Mountbatten, are very different. They're not going to be spaced out, marked out for cars. They are coastal car parks. If you go to many other coastal car parks in the area, it's a similar picture. That's why the charges aren't extortionate. The proposal states £2 for 1 hour afterwards, subject to public onwards, subject to public consultation. So the cost of parking there reflects the state, if that's the right word, the condition of the car park. But there will be maintenance, and equally, as part of our parking fees, we contribute to Transport and Highways to maintain enforcement throughout our city road. Councillor Steele successfully gained a reduction of speed limit from 60 miles an hour to 30 along Jennycliff Lane. What we need to do is to make sure that we can enforce that. The income that goes in from the parking budget helps carry that out throughout the city. Thank you.
Do you have a supplementary? Councillor Holloway.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My question is for Councillor Brysdalve. Councillor Brysdalve, you will be aware that I've spent much of the past 4 years pushing for improved lighting on the unlit stretch of Central Park near the Ford Park Road entrance through the wooded valley, and that I've been raising this to anyone that will listen. More recently, a local women's group, running group, has launched Light Up Our Park, Make Central Park Safer for Everyone petition, highlighting the same concerns. In the past, we've been told progress is difficult due to funding pressures and also concerns about bat well-being. Can you update Council on what options are currently being explored to improve lighting along this route while being sensitive to the environmental and financial constraints? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holloway, and thank you for the constructive campaign that you've run on this. You've been incredibly consistent and standing up for your residents, and I'm also grateful for the Light Up Your Park campaign as well, for getting their voices heard. I can confirm that the Councillor Evans has personally instructed officers to explore options for a lighting pilot in part of Central Park that you're referring to, and we're hoping to implement that pilot later this year in time for when the nights start to go earlier and people start to worry about their safety. But with that being, as you say, an important habitat for nature, we will of course be making sure that that is considerate for that as well.
You have a supplementary?
Yeah, quick one, please, Lord Mayor. That's really welcome news. Thank you, Councillor Brysdalve. Given that strength of feeling from local residents, from running groups, can you also commit, on the off chance, to when those proposals are developed, that they're done so with the opportunity for residents to feed in, and also the running group, and also VORG champions who will have good insights as to what makes spaces safe for particularly women running at night? Thank you.
Views and opinions of any residents in Drake Ward would be very welcome. Thank you.
Councillor Gilmore? No? Chris Wood, do you have Councillor Chris Wood, do you have another question?
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. It's for Councillor Stevens. Over 300 people have now signed the petition set up by Councillor Chipto-Fan and I to return the number 27 and 28 city centre bus stops to Royal Parade, as it is felt by many bus users that Mayflower Street is inappropriate. We'll send you a link to the petition after the meeting. I'm grateful that the Council will now reconsider the positioning of these bus stops, but does the Council recognise that the project team in your department should have properly consulted with bus users before the decision was made to relocate these bus stops in the first place?
Lord Mayor, thank you for your question, Councillor Woods. During our review of the bus stop allocations, we will look at no stone unturned to see what could we do the same or differently or better going forward. But I'm pleased that through bus operators and the City Council, we're looking at those allocations. I know there was discussion, informal discussion with bus passengers during that period. Of course, many of them were okay with it because it was temporary in their eyes. But we will look at that matter going forward, as I said earlier on, taking into account the views of residents and members that have fed back to me, including yourself. Thank you.
Councillor Noble, do you have a question?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. A question for John Stevens. We've seen the creation of many cycleways and paths across the ward. My ward had them at Forder Valley, Plimbridge Road, and additional ones with the Road to George scheme. And earlier on, you announced the creation of the Bryant Vincent Way. What can you tell me about how these improvements to pathways have changed or made a difference to the people's travelling modes in Plymouth?
Lord Mayor, thank you, Councillor Noble. That's a really good question because there's, as I said earlier on, we've got a £750,000 investment going forward for the next 18 months. What's the point of investing a lot of money bidding for it, which our office does really well, and what impact? The purpose of developing an active travel infrastructure is to improve public health, option for leisure, reduce shorter car journeys, have cleaner air, and people to use the green spaces we have. And Plymouth is one of 18 cities in a tranche of local authorities called the Transforming Cities Fund. And that money, which was started to be granted in 2016, I believe, 2016, is that right, Councillor Cook? Something like that. It might be 14. We're subject, rightly, to data surveys from the DFT to show what difference does such investment make to our city. And I'm really pleased that since 2016 to 24, Plymouth is actually top in 3 categories. We have had a 27% increase in participation in cycling across the city. You have to remember, when you look at that data, some cities and local authorities have regressed from their starting points. So Plymouth has a 27% increase in cycling participation, a 4% increase in walking as a travel mode from residents in the city, and an almost 6,000% increase in electric vehicle uptake. Now, you might look at starting points, but for us to be in the top, for us to be top of all those 18 authorities in the country for that funding, that's good news. That's good news. So well done to the officers who've brought that about, and the councillors who've pushed for it, and the people who are actually making the wheels turn, literally. Thank you.
Do you have a supplementary? Councillor Clay.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This is a question for Councillor Kate Taylor. I'm asking this with your customer service and digital transformation hat on. I've had a few residents ask for developments in 2 areas of digital delivery. Firstly, to enable live subtitles to improve the accessibility of watching council meetings from home. And secondly, to increase the file size allowance for photos on report it forms. So an average iPhone photo is about 8 megabytes in size, and really frustratingly, the form has a max limit of 5. So upping that size limit would more easily allow residents to report issues close to them. Are these measures you'd be thinking about introducing?
Thank you, Councillor McClay. On the second one, it's a personal bugbear of mine, and I've been working my way very slowly through the forms, identifying which ones. Some of them are now better. The pothole ones, for example, has a higher megabyte. I noticed the drains one last night when I was reporting isn't, so we're trying to get it across all of the forms. If there are any that you could flag specifically, we can just get it done as a quite easy fix. The subtitles one, absolutely right. I will flag it with the team. I don't know if it will sit with me or the leader of the council, but it's a very easy fix and we'll get it done. Do
you have a supplementary? Councillor Ricketts.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. It's been a lovely afternoon. Question to Councillor Stevens. When I was head of parking 2018, the permit was £30. How do you justify it going up to £63?
Inflation and running costs, because since that time things have gone up. You might have noticed. That's the answer. Thank you.
Do you have a supplementary?
When there's the document that looks at the fees and charges, the incredible fees and charges that you're introducing, it mentions that one of the elements to rationale is net zero. Can you explain how that comes into play here, please?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Net zero obviously is an issue. I'm so glad you were asking a question. Well, that's fantastic. You've obviously reformed in your thinking about this. We're not, as the paper says, we're not bashing and making people reduce the car permits. But there are some things that we have to take responsibility as humans for looking after the city, the locality we live in. There's terrific amount of pressure in areas that have permits. And sometimes that pressure is added by multiple car households. Now, there are some areas that, 2 cars is quite typical in many households, so they would need 2 permits. But we are looking at how can we, for example, if linked into this, and parking has a key part on the bus enhanced partnership we have as well. So the bus operators and our parking team work hand in hand to enable parking, whether it's through a permit or through a parking charge, for those people who need to make those necessary journeys by car. But also we're working to actually see, well, how can we tie that in where we can promote public transport as a means of moving into the city as well. So we are looking at, as most people are, cleaner cars over time, as well as cleaner streets through as much public transport as is feasible. But we're not car bashing. No, we're not. And that's why we withdrew the proposal at this stage for a multiple escalated cost, as they were laid out in the paper, because the public feedback wasn't favourable for that. So we listened and we acted. Thank you.
Councillor Rainsford.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. A question to Councillor Bryce Delve. A significant amount of my casework, and I guess virtually everybody in this room, relates to fly tipping. And I go out on more walks, I pick up issues, I do lots of litter picking across my patch, and it is a very serious concern to my residents. It's antisocial behaviour. I was therefore pleased this morning to hear that the government intend to give the Environment Agency additional powers to beef up their approach. But could I ask Councillor Bryce-Delve, what can the council do in the face of this increase in fly tipping? Will you lend our support to the government's proposals?
Thank you, Councillor, for your question. You're exactly right. I'm sure all of us go round and spot fly tipping. I've got to commend you for how hard you work as a ward councillor getting that reported. Fly tipping is tricky because the council can't have eyes everywhere, but there are lots of ways in which we're trying to address fly tipping as a city. So one of those is with regards to the maximum fines that we can give out. We know that most landlords are good landlords in Plymouth, but there are some corrupt landlords who just dump a huge amount of furniture in the back alleys, and we want to tackle that. There are also some, and again a small minority, of waste businesses who take money from ordinary residents. The residents think they're doing the right thing, but they might not have the right certification, and then they're dumping that at the public expense. And we want to be able to tackle that through higher maximum fines. We've also been piloting moving CCTV. So we started that first of all in Mutley and also in a part of Sutton and Mount Gold, which were evidence-led hotspots for fly tipping, where we've tried out cameras, we've publicised the cameras as a deterrent, and that has worked. It's caught people and it's helped to put people off. And finally, we've introduced new technology. Our refuse collectors are going up and down every road, every service lane across this city, and we've made it easier through their digital system to proactively report fly tipping when they see it, so that we can more quickly address fly tipping in communities. But thank you for your question.
Do you have a supplementary? Councillor Dingle.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
I'd like to ask Councillor Penberthy about the wider economic, social and environmental benefits the Council has committed to secure through procurement activity. Can the Cabinet member confirm whether this is being achieved?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Procurement's one of these really dull topics, isn't it? People think, well, how we spend our money doesn't make a really big difference. Well, this year, to date, 58% of our total spend has been local. And I think that is absolutely amazing. It's up from 55, it's over the 55% target. That's £258 million spent locally, £69 million more than this time last year. But it's also important that we support SMEs. And we are once again ahead of target, and we've spent £147 million this year with SMEs so far. That's £49 million more than this time last year. So we're supporting local small businesses, we're supporting other local businesses, and then what about social value? What do we get back, those bits that are intangible that businesses say we will give you over and above the value of the contracts? Well, so far this year, that's over £9 million worth of extras that have come in advance or in extra more than the contract because of social value. That's £2.1 million more than this time last year. So I think that's a really good example of how we as a council use our spending power to support the local economy, keep money in the local economy, support local businesses that are locally owned, and ensure that people selling to us are giving back to the local community in really tangible ways. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Do you have a supplementary? Councillor Tui.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I have a question for Councillor Stevens. I welcome the announcement of safer, accessible and inclusive cycle and walking paths around the city. However, can you tell me what is planned to help people to cross the roads at some of our city's busiest roads and junctions?
Lord Mayor, thank you, Councillor Tui. I'm really happy to share that information because it's important that we keep our pedestrians safe. So, for example, at the junction of Ford Hill, Molesworth Road, Milehouse Road, Devonport Road, currently there's working on there to fit 4 pedestrianised controlled crossings, which will make it much safer for those people who want to access Stoke Village, for the school children to travel to local schools. So that's increasing safe independence. We're also putting in, I think it's in the autumn, a zebra crossing on Budshead Road, so people there can cross safely to the shops. Outside Compton Primary School, I just signed something this morning so that, I didn't have a technical term, something this morning, so that a build-out and a raised platform will be placed at Pern Road to enhance the safer school streets there that members in that ward have been very supportive of. And along Mutley Plain and Greenback Road Junction, despite the thoughts of a person, the traffic signals will be installed there to make crossing safer. Again, at a 5-road junction, that'll be good. And the Police and Crime Commissioner was very happy about that as well, based on the safety record of that area. And we're also fixing a fence in a little-known stretch of land called Lucas Lane to Seagull Bridge in Sutton and Mount Gold. So because there is a risk of that fence being a bit wobbly, and as Embankment Road is underneath, it would be wise to repair it. But essentially, for your ears, Councillor Chewy, the residents in Ham will be pleased that we're also going to install traffic signals at the junction of Ham Drive and Hornicknoll Lane to make it safer for pedestrians of all ages to cross. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, do you have a supplementary, Councillor Chewy? Do you have a supplementary question? Councillor Evans.
I just wanted to ask if I could ask you a question, which is, are we going to have the opportunity at the end of the meeting, because it's not on the agenda, to say goodbye to people who are standing down this year?
I was intending to make a point of this. Councillor Poyser.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. A question for, I think, Councillor Pemberthy. We can't deny the really valuable work that our community centres are doing across the city. Some of those centres are facing increased costs, mainly through energy, national insurance, rents, non-domestic rates. I wonder whether there's an opportunity at some point over the next year to perhaps review some of those cost pressures that community centres are facing and somehow come to provide some kind of support to them. So the question is there on the horizon, is there any support for our city's community centres?
Be fair to say that a lot of the community centres in the city don't belong to the council anyway, and if we were to start opening up large amounts of support to buildings that we have no responsibility for, that really is going to be very, very difficult. So if the community centres don't belong to the council, I'd say probably not, and I just want to be honest about that. We are looking, and we have told Scrutiny that we're coming back in the next municipal year with a proposal on an asset management strategy that will look at all of our buildings. A lot of our buildings are used by community groups on licenses and leases, and actually at fairly heavily subsidised levels already. So we need to be looking at that because we are spending money on buildings at times that are not paying us the costs that we are putting back into them to enable us even to borrow the monies to upgrade them. So we are already putting substantial support into community centres, sports clubs at community levels, so cricket clubs, football clubs, rugby clubs, cricket clubs, all sorts of things. So whilst I'm not saying it's impossible, I'm saying that we need to look at it in the round of all of that and see where we have to prioritise our spend on our corporate estate, and whether that is by upgrading buildings, meeting our statutory requirements and bringing buildings back into use or making them fit for purpose or whatever. I would encourage those community groups that don't have a community asset transfer type arrangement to consider whether it would be better for them to take control over a very long lease on the building, which means that they could raise money to maintain and support and think about the future of the building themselves, rather than be dependent on us on a sort of license type arrangement. It's worked really well for people like Real Ideas, Four Greens Community Trust, the Wolsey Trust, various almshouses, sports clubs, and I'll declare an interest for the Millfields Trust as well, where I sit on the board. So I would encourage groups to take those longer term views.
Supplementary? Councillor Wood.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. This is for Councillor Kate Taylor. Under the About the Council section of the Council's website is a link to our customer service strategy. The document states it was last updated 11 years ago in November 2014, states the strategy is to 2015-18. Are you content that this is the latest version, and what does it say to residents about the quality of our customer service when the presented document can be so out of date?
Clearly, I can't speak for anything prior to January the 1st, 2026, Councillor Wood, but you will be pleased to hear that following us taking the transformation strategy to Scrutiny Management Board and to Cabinet on Monday, the customer service strategy will follow because it makes sense to set the strategy before we look at how our systems fit within it. So that will be going to pre-decision scrutiny via the relevant scrutiny panel in the new municipal year.
That concludes the questions. We have no time for any further questions. This is the last meeting of the Council before the elections on the 7th of May. Some of you are retiring. Some of you may not be re-elected, but I'd like to thank every single one of you for the service you've given over the last, some of you for many years. And we will obviously be a very different council in May when we come back. So thank you all very, very much for your service. That now concludes the business of the City Council for this meeting. And thank you all for your time and engagement. And I wish all those of you watching a good evening and hope you all stay safe and well. Thank you.